"Ma'am, please save my dad," the boy cried, his voice cracking with panic. The rain that night was relentless, drowning out everything in Atlanta: the noise, the heat, the lights, and almost a man's life. Elliot Carter, Sr., a titan of the Southern tech world, was slumped over in the driver's seat of his Bentley, parked haphazardly on the shoulder of a poorly lit road just outside Buckhead. His chest felt like a vice, his vision swam, and his breath came in shallow gasps. He'd pulled over just moments before, dismissing the dizziness as simple fatigue, but this was far beyond ordinary exhaustion. In the back seat, his 5-year-old son, Elliot Jr., pressed his small palms against his father's shoulder. "Daddy, please wake up, please." There was no response, only the steady drumming of the rain on the car's metal roof. The boy's voice trembled. Tears streamed down his face as he pushed open the car door. The wind almost knocked him off his feet, and the rain soaked through his little hoodie in an instant. He was lost and didn't know where to go. All he knew was that someone had to help. A young black woman stood nearby, wrapped in a faded gray coat and clutching a small purse to her chest. Maya Williams, 29, was bone-tired after another grueling shift washing dishes at the local diner. She'd once been a respected nurse, but lost her license after speaking out against a doctor's misconduct. She looked up, startled, as the boy ran toward her. Ma'am, he gasped, tugging urgently at her sleeve. "Ma'am, please save my dad. He's not moving." "Nummy?" Maya blinked, her mind slow to catch up. What happened?" "He fell asleep, I think," the boy stammered. "In the car. He won't wake up. I tried calling, but please, he's not breathing right." He tugged harder at her arm. A shiver ran down Maya's spine. She hadn't heard those words in nearly 3 years. Not since she'd been forced out of county medical for blowing the whistle on malpractice. Since then, she'd made a vow to keep her head down, stay out of trouble. But this child, the pleading in his eyes, cut through her deeper than any lawsuit or career setback ever could. "Take me to him," she said. Without another word, the boy turned and ran, Maya right behind him, her sneakers slipping on the rain-slicked pavement until they reached the Bentley. The headlights flickered weakly, casting a dim light on the man inside. His lips were blue. "Stay back, sweetheart," she said gently. "I'll help him." She yanked open the car door and eased the man back, quickly checking his airway and pulse. It was faint, barely there. She started compressions, counting aloud to steady herself. 1, 2, 3. Breathe. Come on, stay with me. Her soaked sleeves clung to her arms, the storm blurring everything around her. Suddenly, tires screeched behind her. A black Mercedes screeched to a halt, and an older woman emerged. Helen Carter, elegant in a long coat, diamonds sparkling even in the downpour. The sight that greeted her eyes made her blood run cold. Her son, limp in a stranger's arms, and that stranger a black woman pressing on his chest. Helen's face contorted in a mask of panic and fury. "What are you doing to my son?" she screamed, rushing forward. Maya turned, panting for breath. "Ma'am, he's having a heart attack." "I'm trying to." Before she could finish, Helen's umbrella crashed into her shoulder. "Liar. Get away from him." The older woman struck again, slapping Maya hard across the face. The sharp crack was swallowed by the thunder. "Grandma, stop!" Elliot Jr. cried from the curb, but she wouldn't listen. She grabbed Maya by the collar of her coat, yanking her backward. "Please let me help him," Maya gasped, struggling to keep her balance. Her knees slammed against the wet asphalt, but she pushed forward again. "If I stop, he'll die." Helen shoved her once more, the umbrella handle slamming into Maya's back. "You people never know your place. Get away." Maya winced in pain but crawled closer to the car door, her eyes locked on the man's motionless chest. Her voice broke, desperate. "He's not breathing. Please, just let me." The boy screamed. "She's helping Grandma. Daddy needs her." Helen froze for a split second, just long enough for Maya to seize the opportunity. She slipped past the older woman and resumed compressions, her palms pressing into the billionaire's chest with steady rhythm despite her bruised ribs. "Come on," she whispered through clenched teeth. "Don't you dare give up on me now." Rain poured through the open car door, soaking them both. Her muscles screamed in protest, but she didn't stop. Then, a twitch, a gasp. The man's body jerked slightly beneath her hands. Maya leaned close. "That's it. Breathe. Come on, sir. Breathe." Elliot Carter, Sr., coughed, water and air forcing their way back into his lungs. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but alive. Helen dropped the umbrella, her expression shattering into disbelief. "Elliot!" But before anyone could speak again, red and blue lights flashed through the storm. 2 police cruisers screeched to a halt nearby. Officers jumped out, their flashlights cutting through the rain. One officer grabbed Maya's arm. "Ma'am, step back now." "She saved him," Elliot Jr. shouted, running toward them. "She saved my daddy." Helen, still in shock, stammered. She attacked him, I think." "No." Maya tried to explain, breathless. "He collapsed. I was giving CPR. I'm a former nurse. Check his pulse. He's alive because—" "Ma'am, that's enough." One of the officers interrupted, twisting her wrists behind her. The boy cried harder. "Don't take her. She didn't do anything." Maya met his tearful gaze as they led her toward the patrol car. Her back ached where she'd been struck. Her face burned, but she forced a small, tired smile. "It's okay, honey," she whispered. "Your daddy's safe now." Behind her, Elliot Sr. stirred again, his lips moving weakly as paramedics arrived. The last thing Maya saw before the cruiser door slammed shut was the boy clutching his father's hand and the older woman standing in the rain, frozen between guilt and disbelief. As the car pulled away, sirens echoing through the wet night, Maya leaned her head against the cold window. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from the ache of holding on when every instinct screamed to let go. Sometimes saving a life meant sacrificing your own peace. And somewhere behind her, a billionaire gasped his first breath back into the world because a woman he'd never met refused to give up. The patrol car was cold inside, the vinyl seat sticking to Maya's soaked jeans. Her hands, cuffed behind her, tingled with numbness. Whether from the cold or adrenaline, she couldn't tell. The rain still hammered against the roof as the vehicle idled near the scene. Through the fogged window, Maya could see the flashing lights of the ambulance now surrounding the Bentley. Paramedics knelt beside Elliot Carter, Sr., placing oxygen tubes and checking his vitals. He was alive. That should have meant something. But right now, it didn't equate to freedom. The officer in the passenger seat turned to glance at her. His face was unreadable. He was white, maybe in his late 40s, with tired eyes and a badge that looked too heavy for his chest. "Name?" he asked. "Maya Williams," she said quietly, her teeth chattering slightly from the cold. He wrote something down. "You got ID?" "It's in my purse on the sidewalk," she said. "I dropped it when you assaulted the man in the car." He interrupted, not looking at her. Maya stiffened. "I didn't assault him. I saved his life." "That's not what his mother said." "She hit me, pulled me away while I was doing CPR." Maya snapped, the sting of that moment still fresh on her back. "Look at my shoulder. Look at my face." The officer's pen paused in the middle of his notebook. He looked at her, finally seeing the red handprint still faintly visible on her cheek. "Why would she hit you?" Maya's throat tightened. She didn't have a simple answer for that. Because she was black. Because she wasn't in a uniform. Because a woman like Helen Carter couldn't fathom a world where a stranger who looked like Maya would choose to save her son instead of harm him. She didn't speak. The rear door opened. Another officer leaned in, taller and Latino, probably in his early 30s. His expression was more alert. "We just got confirmation," he said. "Paramedics say she initiated CPR. Kid confirmed it, too. She kept him alive until we got there." The older cop looked over his shoulder at Maya. "That true?" Maya nodded slowly. "Yes." The younger officer tilted his head slightly. "She used correct technique. Paramedic said her form was textbook. Probably saved the guy. She says she used to be a nurse. The older one muttered something under his breath. I still am, Maya said, lifting her chin. Just not licensed. Not anymore. The younger cop gave a tight nod and stepped back from the door. You want to press charges? The older officer asked. No, Maya said sharply. But I want it on the record that I was struck, physically assaulted. I didn't fight back. I didn't touch anyone except to save a life. The silence that followed stretched on. Then, without another word, the older officer opened her door, reached down and unlocked her cuffs. You're free to go, Miss Williams. Maya pulled her arms around to the front, wincing at the stiffness. She stepped out into the rain again, feeling weaker than before. As she walked back toward the scene, Elliot Jr. broke away from a paramedic and ran straight into her legs. You're not going to jail, he cried, wrapping his arms around her. Maya crouched down slowly, despite the ache in her knees. She hugged him back, her voice soft. No, baby, I'm not. No. Behind them, Helen Carter stood near the ambulance. A wool coat now draped over her shoulders, her expression tight and unreadable. Her eyes landed on Maya, but this time they didn't burn with rage. They just looked tired, confused, maybe even ashamed. Maya didn't approach her. She had done her part. The rest wasn't hers to carry. Miss, a medic waved her over. We need your information for the hospital report. Maya nodded, gently letting go of Elliot Jr., who still clung to her coat like a lifeline. She gave her name, address, and what remained of her professional credentials. The medic looked surprised when she rattled off precise terminology for chest compressions and vitals. You sure you're not active duty? He asked with a half-smile. Maya exhaled. Not anymore. He jotted it down and handed her a blanket, which she wrapped around her shoulders. It smelled like antiseptic and warmth. Do you have someone who can pick you up? He asked. Maya shook her head. Bus stops down the street. I'll be fine. Before she could turn to leave, a low, hoarse voice rasped from the gurney behind the ambulance doors. Wait, it was Elliot Carter Sr. He had an oxygen mask on, his eyes half-lidded, but they were fixed directly on her. You, he whispered. You saved me. Maya stepped closer, blinking against a fresh wave of rain and disbelief. I did what I had to do, she said softly. His lips moved again. Thank you. The medic interrupted. Sir, we need to get moving. But Elliot held up a finger weakly, and his eyes didn't leave Maya's. She didn't hurt me, he said with surprising clarity. She helped me. Helen flinched behind the medics. Maya said nothing. Her silence this time held the weight of restraint, not fear. The ambulance doors closed with a thud, and the siren started up again. As the lights faded into the distance, Maya pulled the blanket tighter around herself. Her whole body felt like it had been run through fire and ice, bruised, sore, soaked, but still standing. One of the officers approached her again. If you want to file a formal complaint against the older woman, we can take a statement. Maya looked down the street, the storm now thinning to a drizzle. She remembered the boy's tiny hands pulling on her sleeve, the cracked voice begging, Please save my dad. She shook her head. Not tonight. He looked surprised. Are you sure? Some things are bigger than a slap. He hesitated, then said, You're a good one, Miss Williams. No, she replied. I'm just stubborn. She walked back to the bus stop, her soaked shoes squishing with every step. And though she was alone again, something inside her had shifted. She had acted on instinct, on skill, on heart. And not once did she regret it. Because when a child begs for a miracle, sometimes you become one without even intending to. Maya sat alone at the back of the nearly empty bus. Her body was curled up in the blanket the medic had given her. The bus hummed quietly, fluorescent lights flickering overhead. The driver hadn't said much when she boarded, only offering a nod and a glance at her muddy shoes. She appreciated the quiet. She didn't have the energy for small talk, The bruises on her back throbbed in time with the rhythm of the road beneath the wheels. Every bump sent a dull ache through her shoulders. But that wasn't what hurt the most. What lingered was the venom in Helen Carter's voice, slicing through the rain, a venom that felt older than the moment itself. She looked at me like I didn't belong. Maya whispered to no one. Like I was the danger, even when I was saving him. She pulled the blanket tighter. The city passed by outside the window in streaks of wet neon and shadow. A familiar blur. This part of Atlanta, her part, wasn't in the brochures. Cracked sidewalks, corner stores with metal grates, graffiti on brick. The kind of place no billionaire ever visited unless they were lost or looking for something they didn't want to admit they needed. Her stop arrived. She stepped off, her shoes squishing against the curb, the wind sharp against her face. A group of men stood under the awning of a liquor store nearby, arguing about football. One glanced her way, did a double take when he saw the hospital blanket around her shoulders, then looked away. She didn't care. The walk to her building was short, but it felt like a mile. She unlocked the front door of the unit she shared with her aunt, a small two-bedroom apartment on the second floor. As she stepped inside, the warm scent of peppermint tea and fabric softener washed over her like a familiar embrace. "Maya?" A voice called from the kitchen. "You're late, baby. You okay?" Her Aunt Lorraine appeared in her nightgown, robe tied tight, gray curls tucked into a bonnet. Maya gave her a tired smile. "I'm okay, Auntie. Just had a long night." Lorraine took one look at her face, the faint swelling, the scratch on her temple, and her eyes narrowed. "That ain't a long night, child. That's a fight." Maya shook her head. "It wasn't what it looked like." Lorraine crossed her arms. "Then tell me what it was." So Maya did. She told her everything about the little boy who found her. The man in the car, the CPR, the slap, the cuffs, and the quiet gratitude from a man she'd nearly died saving. Lorraine listened, silent and still. When Maya finished, her aunt exhaled deeply. "And they just let you walk home after that?" "I took the bus." Lorraine stared at her. "You should have let me know. You should have called. I didn't want you to worry." "Honey," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Worrying is what I do. It's how I know I still got you, Maya." Finally, Maya's body slumped forward, drained. "I didn't think I'd ever do that again," she said. "Use what I know. Not after what happened at County." "You didn't think you'd save someone?" "I didn't think anyone would let me." Lorraine reached for her hand. "You didn't wait for permission, did you?" "No," Maya whispered. "I just heard the boy's voice. That's all I needed." They sat like that for a long time. No TV. No music. Just the quiet creak of pipes and the hum of the refrigerator. Then Lorraine stood. "You need rest. Ice that shoulder. You're going to be sore in the morning." "I already am." Before heading to her room, Lorraine paused. "You did right, Maya. Even if the world's too scared or proud to say so." Maya nodded, but her eyes stayed on the window, watching the last drops of rain trail down the glass. Her mind drifted back to the boy's face, his desperation, his hope. "He believed me," she thought. That was enough. The next morning, the city woke slowly under gray skies and wet streets. Maya sat on the couch, a cold pack pressed to her shoulder. Flipping through local news on her phone, she scrolled past headlines until one froze her hand in mid-swipe. Billionaire saved by stranger after medical emergency. Identity unknown. She tapped it open. A blurry photo taken from a distance showed the Bentley, the ambulance, and police tape. No names yet, but the comments were already pouring in. Bet it was staged. Probably someone trying to get a lawsuit or payout. Looks like another scam. Hope that woman didn't hurt him. Maya swallowed hard. Even without being named, she was already under suspicion. She turned off the screen. Later that afternoon, as she sorted laundry, her phone rang from the kitchen counter. A known number. She hesitated, then answered. "Miss Williams." A man's voice said, "This is Dr. Kaminsky from Atlanta Regional. I was the attending physician last night when Mr. Elliot Carter Sr. was admitted." "Yes, doctor," she said cautiously. I wanted to reach out personally, he said. Mr. Carter is stable now, and he insisted we contact you. Maya's breath caught. Is he all right? He's recovering well, thanks to your early intervention. In fact, he said, and I quote, she's the reason I'm here. She sat down slowly. Her legs had started shaking. I know this must have been traumatic, the doctor continued, but I hope you'll consider coming by. Mr. Carter wants to speak with you when you're ready. Maya looked at the calendar on the wall. The date glared back at her, the anniversary of the day she was fired from county. She closed her eyes. I'll come, she said. Tell him I'll come. The hospital lobby smelled like bleach and resignation. Maya paused at the automatic doors before stepping inside. Her reflection briefly caught in the glass. The purple-blue bruise on her cheek had started to fade but was still visible under light makeup. She wore her best shirt, a modest blouse she'd ironed 3 times that morning, and her cleanest jeans. It was the most dignity she could afford. At the check-in desk, a nurse with a cheery badge and tired eyes glanced up. Name? Maya Williams, she said, her voice firmer than she expected. I'm here to see Mr. Elliot Carter Sr. The nurse blinked, clearly recognizing the name, and typed something quickly. Room 718. He's expecting you. Then, after a pause, I think he'll be glad you came. Maya gave a faint nod and made her way toward the elevator, her shoes clicking softly on the tile. As the doors closed around her, she exhaled slowly. It had been 3 days since that night, 3 days of bruises and silence, and too many phone calls from news reporters who had somehow found her number. She hadn't answered a single one. But this was different. Room 718 was on the corner, offering a sweeping view of the city skyline stretching toward the horizon. Maya stood at the threshold for a moment, the door already ajar. The man in the bed was propped up slightly, for lines taped to his arm, color slowly returning to his cheeks. Elliot Carter Sr. looked smaller than she remembered, not weak, just real. No suits, no headlines, just a man recovering from the brink of death. He turned when he heard the soft sound of her shoes. His eyes met hers, calmer now, clearer. Maya Williams, he said, his voice raspy but strong. I was hoping you'd come. I wasn't sure I should come. I'm glad you did. She stepped inside, unsure whether to shake his hand, bow her head, or simply stand there awkwardly. He sensed her hesitation. You can sit, please. There was a visitor's chair beside the bed, clean and unoccupied. She took it. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Elliot broke the silence. They told me everything. The doctors, my son, the paramedics. I owe you my life. Maya folded her hands in her lap. I didn't do it for a thank you. I know. That's what makes it harder to say. He looked at her, really looked, and she saw no smugness, no entitlement, just a man who had nearly died, trying to grasp what had happened. Why did you help me? He asked, his tone sincere, not suspicious. Maya hesitated. Because your son asked me to, and because I knew what to do. His eyes softened. My mother. She told me what she did, what she thought. Maya sat up straighter, the tension returning. I'm not pressing charges. If that's what you're worried about, I'm not, he said quickly. I mean, I wouldn't blame you if you did. But no, that's not what this is about. He reached for the cup of water on his tray, his hands trembling slightly. Maya instinctively stood to help, but stopped herself. I've spent a lot of my life in control, he said, sipping carefully. Running companies, investments, buying influence. I always assumed I could fix anything with a phone call. He set the cup down. But lying on that sidewalk, gasping like a fish, and seeing you over me, taking hits just to keep me alive, that broke something in me that I didn't know needed breaking. Maya didn't know what to say. Her chest tightened. He continued. I've asked myself, what would have happened if someone else had found me? Would they have walked past, filmed me, left me to die? And the truth is, I don't know. But you didn't. I couldn't, Maya said quietly. That boy. He looked at me like I was the only hope left. You were. He looked down at the 4 in his arm. You still are. There was a knock at the door. Both turned to see Helen Carter standing at the threshold, holding a small bouquet of white lilies. She stepped in slowly, her eyes avoiding Maya's for a full 5 seconds before she finally forced herself to look up. "Maya," she said, her voice trembling. "I'd like to speak to you, if you'll allow it." Maya stood, her fingers tightening on the chair. "I don't need an apology," she said, her voice measured. "What I needed was a chance to save someone without being treated like a threat." Helen nodded once, her face pale. "And you did. You saved my son. I would have saved anyone." "I know that now." Maya studied her. There was no arrogance in her voice anymore, just something fragile, like regret. Elliot watched quietly, letting the two women navigate what couldn't be undone. Helen stepped closer, gently setting the flowers on the windowsill. "I was wrong," she said, "blinded by fear, by old wounds that had nothing to do with you. And I hurt you when you were doing the most selfless thing anyone's ever done for this family." Maya didn't speak. Her silence was more eloquent than any response. "If there's any way I can make it right," Maya finally responded, "start by teaching. He showed your grandson what courage really looks like, because he was brave. He chose trust when everyone else chose fear." Helen swallowed hard and nodded. Then, quietly, she turned and left the room. The silence that followed felt cleaner somehow, like something had been cleared out. Painful but necessary. Elliot smiled faintly. "You're not like anyone I've ever met." Maya exhaled. "Good." He laughed only a little because it still hurt. "You'll come back, right? Let my son thank you properly." "I don't know," she said. "Maybe. Can I call you?" Maya smiled for the first time. "That depends. Are you going to ask for investment advice?" He chuckled again, this time softer. "No. I just want to hear your voice without dying first." She turned to leave, but before she reached the door, Elliot called after her. "Maya." "Yeah. Thank you for saving me and not letting them stop you." She nodded. "Next time," she said. "Just stay alive without all the drama." Maya didn't sleep that night. She tried. She lay in bed, the ceiling fan circling overhead, the hum of the refrigerator leaking from the kitchen like a slow, dull metronome. But her eyes wouldn't close, and when they did, her mind ran faster than her body could rest. The conversation with Elliot Carter Sr. echoed in her head, his voice calm, fragile, grateful, and Helen Carter's apology, stiff and trembling, like a chair with uneven legs. It had felt real, but even reality didn't erase bruises, not the ones under her skin or in her history. Maya stared at the ceiling and thought about what it meant to be seen for the first time. Not as a threat or a mistake or a cautionary tale, but as a healer, a protector. She hadn't worn a nurse's uniform in nearly 3 years. But for 9 minutes on a stormy sidewalk with nothing but her hands and her instinct, she had been exactly what she used to be, maybe even more. She finally rose just after 5 a.m., tugged on a hoodie, and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, washed clean by the storm. She walked a few blocks to her favorite coffee spot, a little local joint called Deacon's Brew, where the staff knew her order and never rushed her. The owner, a bald man in his 60s named Glenn, nodded as she entered. "Early today," he said. "Couldn't sleep." He didn't ask why, just poured her regular strong black coffee with a splash of oat milk and a pinch of cinnamon. She sat by the window and stared at the world slowly waking up. Mail trucks, joggers, buses, high school kids with backpacks too heavy for their posture. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "You saved my father. I hope you'll let me see you again soon. Elliot Jr. with some help from Grandma typing." Maya smiled despite herself. She typed back a simple, "You're very brave. Tell your dad I said hello." She pocketed the phone and tried to sip the rest of her coffee, but a voice broke her thoughts. "You Maya Williams?" She turned. A man stood near her table, early 40s, white, with sharp eyes and a press badge on a lanyard around his neck. "I'm Adam Fielder. I work with Channel 8 News." She straightened. "I'm not interested in interviews." "Maya, I'm not asking for one. Just wanted to say I saw the paramedic report. I know you saved him. I also know how they treated you after. Maya gave a tight nod. You're about the 10th reporter to find me. Why are you different? Because I'm not here for a headline. I'm here for the truth. You didn't ask for any of this attention and still you stepped up. I think people need to hear that. She eyed him carefully. Why? So you can spin it into a feel-good piece and boost your ratings? No, he said. So they remember what justice actually looks like, what it feels like. Maya didn't speak. He pulled a card from his wallet, slid it across the table. When you're ready to talk, not before. Then he left. She stared at the card for a long time, unsure whether to tear it up or tuck it away. In the end, she slipped it into her purse. Later that afternoon, as she folded laundry back at the apartment, Aunt Lorraine stepped in from the hallway with a slightly suspicious expression. You expecting company? Maya frowned. No. Then you better come to the door. She wiped her hands and followed. A tall man stood at the threshold, broad shoulders, pressed shirt, a familiar quiet in his gaze. Elliot Carter Sr. Alive and walking. Hope this isn't too forward, he said. But I had my assistant find your address. You're recovering. You shouldn't be moving around like this. Doctor cleared me, said fresh air would help. So would closure. Maya stepped aside and let him in. Lorraine offered coffee, but Elliot politely declined. He sat on the edge of the couch like he didn't quite believe he was welcome. I needed to see where you came from, he said. Where you went back to. As humble but steady, like you. Maya crossed her arms. You're not here just to compliment my furniture. No, Elliot admitted. I'm here to make an offer. She bristled. If this is a reward, I'm not interested. It's not a reward, he said quickly. It's a proposal, a real one. I run a foundation in my wife's name. It supports medical scholarships, especially for women of color. I want to sponsor you fully. Back to school, license, everything. Maya stared. Why me? Because you didn't just save me. You did it while being dragged, hit, doubted, and you still didn't stop. That kind of heart, skill, grace, it's rare. I don't want pity. It's not pity, Elliot said. It's respect and a little bit of selfishness. I want the woman who saved my life to help save others again. Maya looked away, jaw tight. You think you can just walk into my life and fix everything with a scholarship? No, he said quietly. But I can try to repair what people like me helped break. She let that sit in the air for a long time, then said softly, I haven't worn a white coat in years. Maybe it's time you wore one again. Elliot stood, adjusting his jacket. Think about it. Take your time. You don't owe me anything, but maybe you owe it to yourself. He handed her a folder thick with paperwork, details, and the foundation seal. Then he left, not waiting for applause or thanks. Maya didn't open the folder until after sunset. She sat at the kitchen table, flipped it open, and stared at the words, full academic reentry, tuition, materials, housing support if needed, letter from the board. Maya Williams is a candidate of exceptional resilience and integrity. She touched the paper like it might disappear, and for the first time in a long time, she cried. Maya stood outside the campus of Emory University School of Nursing, staring through the iron gate as students buzzed in and out of buildings, backpacks slung over shoulders, coffee cups in hand, lives in forward motion. The chill of early spring clung to the air, but the trees were starting to bloom, soft whites and pinks stretching toward the Georgia sky like they'd forgotten winter ever happened. She tightened her grip on the admissions envelope. Her name was printed cleanly on the top. Maya Nicole Williams. Below it, in elegant lettering, full scholarship awarded by the Lillian Carter Foundation for Medical Excellence. 3 weeks had passed since Elliot Carter Sr. handed her that folder. She hadn't said yes immediately. She wasn't ready. The pain from that night had started to fade, but the weight of what it meant hadn't. Accepting the scholarship felt like crossing a bridge she didn't build. And yet, here she was. She stepped through the gate, her steps measured, her heart heavier than she let on. The campus was beautiful, yes, but it also reminded her of what she'd lost. of who she'd been before that night at County Medical when her license had been suspended, her reputation buried under bureaucracy and cowardice. But Elliot's words rang in her ears. Maybe it's time you wore the coat again. She entered the admissions building and followed the signs toward the orientation office. Inside, a secretary greeted her politely, handed her a schedule, a student ID, and a packet with information she already knew by heart. Then came the moment. The woman reached beneath the desk and pulled out a folded, pressed, brand new white coat. A name tag was already stitched onto it. M. Williams, student RN. "Welcome back, Miss Williams," the secretary said with a kind smile. "Looks good on you." Maya took it with both hands. It felt heavier than it looked. Not just fabric, but years of doubt, anger, grief, hope, the weight of return. She didn't try it on just yet. Instead, she walked out of the building and found a quiet bench near a fountain. She sat there for a long while, coat in her lap, watching students laugh and share notes and complain about professors' normal things she'd missed. Her phone buzzed. A text from Lorraine. "Proud of you. Don't you dare back out now." Then another from an unfamiliar number. "Hi. It's Elliot Jr. Dad says you're a nurse again. I told him you never stopped being one." Maya smiled. Her thumb hovered over the reply button when another text came in. P.S. Will you come over for dinner sometime? Dad's cooking. He says it's safe now. She chuckled. But before she could reply, a voice cut through her thoughts. Well, if it isn't Atlanta's miracle worker. She turned. Adam Fielder, the reporter from Channel 8, stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets, camera bag slung across his shoulder. She tensed. "I didn't agree to an interview." "No, I'm not here for that," he said quickly. "Promise. I was meeting a contact in the next building, saw you through the window." She raised an eyebrow. "So, you decided to come say hi?" "I did. And to give you this." He pulled a folded piece of paper from his jacket. It was a printed copy of an article. The title read, "When Courage Isn't Convenient, the Maya Williams Story." "I didn't run it," he said. "My editor approved it, I pulled it." Maya blinked. "Why?" "Because I realized it wasn't mine to tell yet. Not without you." She looked at him, surprised. "Most reporters wouldn't care." "I do," he said. "I saw something that night, something bigger than headlines. I saw a woman do what no one else would, and then I saw people try to twist it. That story deserves better than a news cycle." He placed the article beside her on the bench. "If you ever want to tell it on your terms, I'll be here. No rush, no pressure." Maya nodded slowly. "Thank you." Adam turned to go, then paused. "You really going back into medicine?" "I am," she said, lifting the coat from her lap. "One class at a time." "Good," he said. "Atlanta needs you, even if it doesn't know it yet." When he left, Maya finally stood, unfolded the white coat, and slid it over her shoulders. It didn't feel like redemption. It felt like reclaiming. That evening, back at the apartment, Lorraine made cornbread and greens. "Because comfort food is holy," she said. Maya sat at the kitchen table, coat still on, flipping through textbooks already dog-eared and highlighted. "You look like you never left," Lorraine smiled, watching her from across the room. "I feel like I'm just getting started." A knock came at the door. Lorraine raised an eyebrow. "You expecting someone?" Maya shook her head and opened it. Standing there holding a small bouquet of sunflowers and a nervous grin was Elliot Jr. He wore a tie much too big for him. Behind him stood Elliot Sr., holding a casserole dish awkwardly in both hands. "We brought dinner," Elliot Sr. said. "Elliot cooked. I stirred," the boy corrected proudly. Maya stood there stunned. Lorraine peeked over Maya's shoulder. "Well, don't just let the food get cold. Come on in." As the boy rushed in, trailing the scent of baked cheese and something vaguely Italian, Maya looked at Elliot Sr. "I didn't say yes to dinner yet." "I know," he said. "I was hoping you'd say yes with your appetite." She stared at him a moment longer, then stepped aside. "Fine," she said. "But if it's awful, I'm walking out with the pan." He laughed. Inside, the lights were warm. The food was real. And for the first time in years, Maya felt something she hadn't let herself feel: home. The casserole was surprisingly decent, not great. Elliot Jr. had gone heavy on the oregano, and the top layer of cheese had singed in one corner. But it was warm, filling, and more importantly, made with the kind of care that didn't come from recipes. Maya sat at the dinner table, still in her white coat, the scent of baked pasta mingling with the subtle lavender of Lorraine's plug-in air freshener. Elliot Jr. had already finished his first plate and was working on seconds, talking animatedly about how he wanted to be a scientist and also a fireman and also maybe a heart doctor like the one who helped Daddy. Elliot Sr. chuckled quietly at his son's ambitions. "Multitasker," he said. Maya gave him a sidelong look. "I didn't think billionaires made casseroles." "I didn't," he replied, mock-whispering. "But I watched a woman on YouTube do it twice." Lorraine, seated across from them, let out a soft laugh. "You're not half bad for a man with 5 assistants." "Only 4 now," Elliot said. "One quit after I asked her to organize my spice rack." The conversation was light, flowing easily in the small apartment, but under the laughter, under the clinking of forks and the stories from a 5-year-old boy with more energy than sense, Maya felt a tension building, not the uncomfortable kind, but the kind that signaled something was coming, something she'd have to face. She felt it most when Elliot Sr. grew quiet. "You all right?" she asked him. He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking about everything." "That covers a lot of ground." He set his fork down and looked directly at her. "I thought I understood how the world worked, who I could trust, what danger looked like." Maya stayed silent, letting him get there on his own. "But that night, the way you fought to save me, even while being hit, pulled, doubted." He swallowed. "You didn't stop." She leaned back. "I didn't have time to second-guess. If I'd hesitated, you'd be dead. Most people would have walked away." "Maybe," she said. "But your son didn't let me." Elliot Jr. piped up with a mouthful of cornbread. "She's a real hero, Daddy. Like the ones in the movies." Maya smiled at him. "Heroes usually don't have bruised ribs and overdue rent, kiddo." "You can have both," he replied confidently. The moment lingered. Then came the knock at the door, 3 sharp raps. Lorraine stood wary. "You expecting someone else?" Maya shook her head. Elliot Sr. tensed subtly. She moved to the door cautiously and opened it. Standing there was a woman in a beige coat, mid-40s, sharp red lipstick, and eyes that had seen a lot. She flashed a press badge. "Miss Williams, I'm Camille Rost from the Atlanta Register. I was hoping for a moment of your time." Maya didn't hide her irritation. "How did you find me?" Camille didn't flinch. The same way every good story finds its source. Persistence and a little help from someone who thinks your voice matters. "Adam Fielder." Camille offered the slightest nod. Elliot Sr. appeared behind Maya. His posture changed the second he saw Camille. "Miss Rost," he said, his voice cool. "I believe you've already received our statement through legal." "I have," she replied. "But I'm not here for you, Mr. Carter. I'm here for her." She turned back to Maya. "May I come in?" Maya stared at her a moment, then stepped aside. Camille entered, took one look at Lorraine's living room, small, neat, decorated with framed Bible verses and a wall clock shaped like a rooster, and sat carefully on the edge of the floral couch. "I'm not here to dig up dirt," Camille began. "But people need to hear the truth from you." Maya crossed her arms. "And what truth is that? That I performed CPR while being yanked and slapped? That I was treated like a criminal until your storybook billionaire vouched for me?" Camille stayed calm. "The public doesn't know the details. They know whispers, internet threads, speculation. You were cast as a threat before they even knew your name." Maya's jaw tightened. "I'm giving you the chance to tell it your way," Camille continued, unfiltered. "Your voice, your words, not mine." Elliot Sr. stepped in, his tone firm. "If this is about spinning the story for clicks." "It's not," Camille interrupted. "Frankly, it doesn't need spinning. The facts are enough." Maya looked from Camille to Elliot, then to Lorraine, who stood in the kitchen doorway with a dish towel in hand and concern in her eyes. Finally, Maya spoke. What would I even say? Camille smiled. Not the kind you give for charm, but one that said, "Thank you for not shutting the door." You'd say what happened, that you were afraid, that you acted anyway, that you didn't expect gratitude but didn't deserve suspicion. That sometimes when a child begs you to save his father, you don't stop to ask who he is, you just do it. The silence that followed was thick. Elliot Jr., unbothered by adult tension, leaned toward Maya and whispered, "You should tell them. You're braver than anyone." She looked at Camille. "One interview, my terms, one version, the truth." Camille nodded. "That's all I ever ask." As the reporter left, Maya sat back down at the table, her appetite gone, but her resolve sharpened. Elliot Sr. looked at her. "Are you sure about this?" "No," Maya said. "But I'm tired of letting other people write my story for me." She stood, glanced at the white coat still hanging on the chair, and added softly, "It's time they heard the whole truth, even if it hurts." The lights in the small recording studio were soft but focused. No flashing bulbs, no makeup artists, just a single camera, a table, 2 microphones, and Maya's folded hands resting calmly in front of her. Camille Rost sat across from her, dressed in muted navy, notepad open but barely used. She'd already done the background work. What she wanted now was truth, not trivia. The video was being filmed for a segment titled, "One Night, One Choice." It would air in a week, but Maya had final approval before it saw daylight. Still, the red recording light glared like judgment. "You ready?" Camille asked gently. Maya didn't nod. She simply looked up and began speaking. "I was waiting for a bus when he found me, just a little boy, soaking wet, barely old enough to tie his own shoes. He looked at me with these wide eyes and said, 'Ma'am, please save my dad.' That was it. No explanation, no warning, just a plea." She paused. The words hung in the air like the moment itself. "I followed him to the car. His father was slumped over the wheel, cold, not breathing right. I checked his pulse and started CPR. I didn't have a medical bag or gloves or a team, just my hands and my memory." Camille didn't interrupt. Maya continued, her voice steady but soft. "I used to be a nurse, trained, certified. I lost that license after speaking up against someone with more power than me. They called it insubordination. I called it integrity." Her fingers curled slightly on the table. "That night, none of that mattered. I saw a man dying, and I chose to fight for him. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't know he was a billionaire. I didn't know his last name or his politics. All I knew was his child was watching." She swallowed, her jaw tightening, and then his mother arrived. She paused again, not for drama but to keep her emotions from spilling. She saw a black woman leaning over her son and assumed the worst. She screamed. She hit me. She pulled me away from him. The camera didn't flinch, and neither did Camille. I went back anyway because the man was dying, and I was the only one who knew how to stop it. So I did. Even while being accused, even while being struck, even when the cops arrived and cuffed me without asking a single question. Her voice caught slightly but didn't break. "I didn't do it for applause or forgiveness. I did it because life is sacred and because that child looked at me like I mattered." She leaned forward now, her tone shifting slightly. "We talk about justice in this country like it's a thing to be found in courts and laws, but sometimes justice is just a woman doing the right thing in the dark, even when no one believes her. Especially then." Camille sat back. The silence afterward wasn't awkward. It was earned. "Thank you, Maya," she said. "That's all I needed." Maya nodded. Later that evening, the raw footage was sent to her phone. She watched it alone at the kitchen table, earbuds in, the lights low. When the part came where she described being struck, she instinctively rubbed her shoulder, the bruises mostly gone now, but their memory sharp. She didn't cry, not this time. Instead, she clicked approve and sent it back. The segment aired the following Sunday night. It opened with a still shot of the Bentley under the rain, emergency lights flashing in the background. Camille's voice narrated, but the heartbeat of the piece was Maya's own words. Within minutes of airing, it went viral, not because it was dramatic, not because it was political, but because it was honest. On Monday morning, Maya's inbox was full. Messages from nurses who'd been pushed out of hospitals, women who had survived discrimination in silence, strangers thanking her for her courage. A doctor from Boston offered her a mentorship program. A civil rights attorney offered to reopen her license case pro bono. Even more surprising, a letter arrived, handwritten in elegant script. Dear Miss Williams, I watched your interview. For the first time, I didn't see a threat. I saw grace. I'm ashamed of how I treated you. I'm working on that. Thank you for showing my grandson what true strength looks like. Helen Carter. Maya read it 3 times, then folded it and tucked it into her journal. At the hospital, Elliot Sr. met her at the front lobby with 2 cups of coffee. I saw it, he said. She nodded, taking one. You okay with what I said? I was relieved. They walked through the lobby slowly. You weren't just telling your truth, he said. You were telling mine too, and that scares me in a good way. She smiled. You'll get used to it. He looked at her, serious. You changed everything. He showed your grandson the real meaning of courage, someone had said. Because he demonstrated bravery. He chose to believe when everyone else gave in to fear. Helen struggled to swallow, then gave a firm nod. Softly, almost as if afraid to break the moment, she turned and quietly exited the room. The ensuing silence was somehow cleaner, like the air had been cleared. A painful experience, absolutely, but one that was ultimately necessary. A faint smile touched Elliot's lips. You know, you're not like anyone I've ever encountered. Maya simply let out a breath. Good. He chuckled, but it still hurt a little. You're going to come back, though, right? Let my son express his gratitude properly. She hesitated, a shadow crossing her features. I don't know. Maybe. Hey, is it okay if I call you sometime? A genuine smile, the first he'd seen, finally graced Maya's face. That depends on what you want. Are you going to be looking for my hot stock tips and insider investment advice? He laughed again, this time more gently. No, nothing like that. I just want to hear your voice again without nearly dying first. She turned, ready to leave, but before she reached the doorway, Elliot called out, Maya! She paused, turning back slightly. Yeah. Thanks, for saving me, and for not letting them push you around and stop you from doing what you needed to do. She nodded, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. Next time, try to stay alive. Okay? No more of this near-death experience drama. That night, sleep eluded Maya. She tried, really she did. She lay in her bed, the ceiling fan spinning lazily overhead, a constant, rhythmic where that was almost hypnotic. The low hum of the refrigerator seeped from the kitchen, a dull metronome marking the passage of time. But her eyes refused to stay closed. And when they finally did, her mind started racing, thoughts swirling and colliding faster than her body could possibly relax. The conversation with Elliot Carter Sr. replayed in her head, his voice calm and measured, yet laced with a surprising vulnerability. His words were sincere, fragile, and deeply grateful. Then there was Helen Carter's apology, delivered in a tone that was stiff and awkward, her emotions barely concealed. It was like a chair with uneven legs, wobbling precariously, threatening to collapse. And yet, despite the discomfort, it had felt real, genuine. But even the most authentic moments couldn't simply erase the bruises, both the visible ones and the ones hidden beneath the surface, etched into her history. Maya found herself staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. What did it even mean to be truly seen for the first time? Not as a threat, a mistake, or some kind of cautionary tale. Instead, as a healer, a protector, someone who stepped in and did what needed to be done. She hadn't worn a nurse's uniform in nearly 3 years, but for those 9 minutes on that rain-slicked sidewalk, armed with nothing but her bare hands and her instincts, she had been exactly what she once was, and maybe even more than that. Finally, just after 5 a.m., she gave up on sleep. She threw on a hoodie, slipped out of the apartment, and stepped into the cool morning air. The recent storm had scrubbed the city clean, leaving a crisp, fresh scent in its wake. She walked a few blocks to her favorite coffee shop, a small, local place called Deacon's Brew. The staff knew her order by heart and never rushed her, allowing her to savor the quiet moments before the city truly woke up. The owner, Glenn, a friendly bald man in his 60s, simply nodded as she walked through the door. "Up early," he commented, a knowing look in his eyes. Couldn't sleep. He didn't pry, didn't ask for details. He simply poured her usual. A strong black coffee with a splash of oat milk and a dash of cinnamon. She settled into her favorite spot by the window and watched as the world gradually stirred to life. Mail trucks rumbled down the street, joggers pounded the pavement, buses lumbered along their routes, and high school kids struggled under the weight of backpacks that seemed far too heavy for their young frames. Suddenly, her phone buzzed, signaling a text message from an unknown number. "You saved my father's life. I sincerely hope I can see you again soon. Elliot Jr., with a little help from Grandma on the typing." A smile involuntarily crept across Maya's face. She tapped out a quick response. "You're very brave yourself. Tell your dad I said hello." Pocketing her phone, she tried to enjoy the rest of her coffee, but her thoughts were interrupted by a voice. "Excuse me, are you Maya Williams?" She turned to see a man standing near her table. He looked to be in his early 40s, a clean-cut white guy with sharp, observant eyes. A press badge hung from a lanyard around his neck. "I'm Adam Fielder," he said, extending a hand. "I'm a reporter with Channel 8 News." Maya immediately stiffened. "I'm not interested in giving any interviews." Adam quickly raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "Whoa, hold on. I'm not here to interview you. I just wanted to say that I read the paramedics' report. I know that you were the one who saved him, and I also know the way they treated you afterward wasn't right." Maya gave a curt nod, her expression unreadable. "You're what? The 10th reporter who's managed to track me down. What makes you any different?" "Because I'm not chasing a headline," he said firmly. "I'm after the truth. You didn't ask for any of this attention, and despite that, you stepped up and did what needed to be done. I think that's a story people need to hear." Maya eyed him carefully, her skepticism evident. "And why is that? So you can spin it into some feel-good piece and boost your ratings through the roof?" "No," he replied, meeting her gaze directly. "So people remember what real justice actually looks like, and what it feels like in their hearts." Maya didn't respond, simply studying him in silence. Adam reached into his wallet and pulled out a business card, sliding it across the table toward her. "When you're ready to talk about it, not a moment before. That's when you call me." With that, he turned and left the coffee shop. Maya stared at the card for a long time, debating whether she should tear it up and toss it away, or hold on to it. After a moment of contemplation, she tucked it carefully into her purse. Later that afternoon, back in the familiar surroundings of her apartment, Maya was folding laundry when Aunt Lorraine walked in from the hallway, a look of mild suspicion on her face. "Were you expecting someone to come by?" Maya frowned, pausing in her task. "No, not that I know of." "Well, you better head to the door. There's a visitor waiting." Wiping her hands on a towel, Maya followed Lorraine to the apartment's entrance. Standing there, filling the doorway with his presence, was a tall man with broad shoulders, wearing a crisply pressed shirt. There was something familiar, almost a quiet intensity, in his gaze. It was Elliot Carter Sr., alive and well, standing on her doorstep. "I hope I'm not being too forward," he said, his voice carrying a hint of apology. "But I asked my assistant to track down your address." Maya's brow furrowed with concern. "Mr. Carter, you're still recovering. You really shouldn't be moving around like this so soon after everything." Elliot offered a reassuring smile. "My doctor gave me the go-ahead. He said a little fresh air would be good for me, and I think closure would help too." Maya hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside, gesturing for him to enter. "All right, come on in." Lorraine, ever the gracious hostess, immediately offered him a cup of coffee, but Elliot politely declined. He perched on the edge of the couch, seeming unsure of whether he was truly welcome. I just needed to see where you came from, he explained, his gaze sweeping over the modest living room. Where you went back to after everything. It's a humble place, but it has a strength and steadiness to it, just like you. Maya folded her arms, her expression guarded. I have a feeling you didn't come all the way over here just to compliment my decorating style, Mr. Carter. Elliot gave a sheepish grin. No, you're right, I didn't, he admitted. I'm actually here to make you an offer. Maya visibly bristled, her defenses rising. If this is some kind of reward for saving your life, I'm really not interested, Mr. Carter. Elliot quickly shook his head, his eyes filled with sincerity. It's not a reward, Maya, he insisted. It's a genuine proposal, a real opportunity. I run a charitable foundation in my late wife's name. We provide support for medical scholarships, especially for women of color. I want to offer you a full sponsorship. Everything. Tuition, licensing, whatever you need to get back on your feet and back into your career. Maya simply stared at him, speechless. Why me, Mr. Carter? Why this for me? Because you didn't just save my life, Maya. You did it while being dragged, hit, doubted, and demeaned by others. And even despite that, you didn't give up, and you didn't stop. That kind of heart, that skill, that pure grace, it's incredibly rare. I'm not motivated by some misplaced sense of pity. This isn't pity, Maya, Elliot emphasized, his voice firm. It's respect. And a little bit of selfishness, if I'm being honest. I want the woman who saved my life to have the chance to save countless others. Again, Maya averted her gaze, her jaw tight with conflicting emotions. You really think you can just waltz into my life and fix everything with the wave of a scholarship check, Mr. Carter? Just wipe away the past like it never even happened? Of course not, he said quietly, his expression softening. But I can try to repair some of the damage that people like me helped cause. Give you an opportunity that was unfairly taken away. Maybe even begin to rebuild what's been broken. She let his words hang in the air for a long moment, weighing them carefully. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. I haven't worn a white coat in years, Mr. Carter. Then maybe, Elliot replied gently. It's time you wore one again. Elliot stood up, smoothing down his jacket. Think about it, Maya. Take all the time you need. You don't owe me a thing in this world. But maybe you owe it to yourself to give this a chance. He handed her a thick folder, filled with paperwork, program details, and the official seal of the Lillian Carter Foundation. Then he left, offering a simple farewell. He asked for no applause, no expressions of gratitude. He merely walked away, leaving Maya alone with her thoughts and the weight of his proposition. Maya didn't open the folder until the sun had long since set, casting long shadows across the room. She sat down at her small kitchen table, her heart pounding in her chest, and finally flipped it open. Her eyes fell on the bold lettering at the top of the first page. Full academic reentry program, tuition, materials, housing support, if needed. Below that, a more formal letter from the board of the foundation. Maya Williams is a candidate of exceptional resilience and integrity. She reached out a trembling hand and touched the words, as if afraid they might vanish into thin air. And for the first time in a very long time, Maya allowed herself to cry. Maya stood across the street from Emory University School of Nursing, her gaze fixed on the iron gate that marked the entrance to the campus. She watched as students, young and eager, streamed in and out of the buildings, backpacks slung over their shoulders and coffee cups clutched in their hands. Each one seemed to be propelled forward, their lives moving with a purpose and direction she had long since lost. The air held the lingering chill of early spring, but the trees were beginning to bud, their soft white and pink blossoms reaching towards the Georgia sky as if they had already forgotten the harshness of winter. She tightened her grip on the admissions envelope she held in her hand. Her name was printed neatly across the top. Maya Nicole Williams. Below it, in elegant calligraphy, were the words, Full scholarship awarded by the Lillian Carter Foundation for Medical Excellence. 3 weeks had passed since Elliot Carter Sr. had placed that folder in her hands. She hadn't given him an immediate yes. She wasn't ready to just accept his help. The pain from that night, The injustice of it all had begun to fade, but the weight of what? Maya, you didn't just save my life. You made me look at it differently. That's not my job, she replied simply. No, he countered, but maybe it's your gift. As they walked past the reception desk at 48 minutes and 48 seconds, a young black nurse caught Maya's eye. Miss Williams, the nurse called out respectfully. Maya turned. I just wanted to say thank you for giving all of us permission to not keep quiet anymore. Maya's throat tightened with emotion. She gave a small, respectful nod. Thank you for saying that. When they stepped outside, the sun was painting the skyline gold as it set. Elliot Jr. ran ahead, chasing a pigeon, his laughter echoing. You're not going to disappear again, right? Elliot Sr. asked, a hint of concern in his voice. No, Maya said firmly. I've spent enough time being 49 minutes and 20 seconds invisible. And as the city seemed to exhale behind them, the woman, once accused, once silenced, once bruised, walked forward. Her shoulders squared and her voice finally her own. Elliot Carter Sr. stood gazing out the 12th floor window of Carter Financial Group. His eyes fixed on the skyline he once believed he controlled. The morning sun reflected brightly off the high-rise glass, but his mind wasn't on quarterly reports or IPOs. His thoughts were still replaying the scene at Maya's kitchen table and the broadcast that had shaken the 49 minutes and 49 second city just days before. The boardroom behind him hummed with quiet tension. Half a dozen directors shuffled papers, cleared their throats, and exchanged uneasy glances. Elliot had called this emergency meeting without providing an agenda. That alone unsettled them. Billionaires didn't typically do surprises, especially not in business. When he finally turned to face them, his voice was calm but sharp. We need to talk about legacy. That immediately captured their attention. Legacy? Raymond Clean, the head of strategy, barked out the word. He was a man in his early 60s with a watch that cost more than some small cars. 50 minutes and 25 seconds, sir. With all due respect, we have to address the stockholder fallout from the Channel 8 segment first. I am addressing it, Elliot replied, his tone even. Maya Williams is our legacy now. Or rather, how we respond to her is our legacy. Murmurs spread around the table. Are you suggesting we issue a public statement? One director inquired cautiously. No, Elliot said, I'm suggesting we act. No press stunt, no damage control, but actual reform. The CFO, a younger man named Garrett, frowned slightly. What does that mean in practical terms? 50 minutes and 59 seconds. Elliot stepped forward, his gaze sweeping across the room. It means we evaluate every division to identify areas where unconscious bias may have influenced hiring, discipline, or promotion decisions. It means funding scholarships not just through our foundation, but embedding them into company policy. And it means re-examining our own board diversity starting today. Raymond leaned forward, a skeptical look on his face. This is about guilt, isn't it? No, Elliot stated firmly. It's about truth and courage. Something a woman without $1 to her name showed more of than most of us combined. Someone whispered, 51 minutes and 32 seconds, he's serious. Elliot looked around the room, no longer appearing as the tired man in a hospital bed, but as the man who had built an empire, brick by brick. His voice dropped, becoming more intense. You think this is charity? It's not. It's correction. It's justice that's long overdue and, frankly, it's profitable. You want the public to trust us? Show them why they should. For a moment, no one dared to speak. Then, slowly, one hand clapped. It was Eloise Patterson, the company's chief legal counsel. She was one of the few women 52 minutes and 6 seconds and the only black woman on the executive team. That's the first time in years I've heard this board talk about doing something instead of covering something up. Elliot nodded to her in acknowledgement. Would you lead the internal audit? With pleasure, she responded, a hint of defiance in her voice. And for the record, it's about damn time. Meanwhile, across town, Maya stood outside the old clinic on Peachtree Road. It had once been a vibrant community health center, but the funding had dried up years ago, and it shut down, joining so many others that served 52 minutes and 34 seconds low-income families. Today, though, a new sign was being installed. The Maya Williams Community Care Center opening soon. She could hardly believe it. Not because she hadn't dreamed of something like this, but because it had actually happened. The funding was a combination of Carter Foundation backing and a wave of donations that had poured in after the interview aired, some large, most small. Many anonymous notes had accompanied some of them. My daughter is alive because a nurse like you didn't give up. You reminded me why I joined 53 minutes and 6 seconds medicine in the first place. Thank you for protecting our sons when no one else did. Inside, walls were being painted and exam tables were being delivered. Maya walked through the space, clipboard in hand, greeting volunteers and answering questions. Her white coat now had the center's name embroidered over her heart. Lorraine followed closely behind, carrying a tray of lemonade. Feels real now, doesn't it? She asked, a smile playing on her lips. It does, Maya agreed, her voice filled with emotion, and a little terrifying. You've fought worse, Lorraine reminded her. Maya smiled ruefully. That's the 53 minutes and 41 seconds problem. I'm starting to get used to fighting. Lorraine handed her a cup of lemonade. Well, fight smart this time. This place isn't just a clinic. It's a symbol. They'll come for it. I know, Maya said quietly, her expression hardening. But they'll have to go through me. That night at the Carter estate, Elliot Sr. sat in his study, sipping a glass of tea instead of bourbon. His son was asleep upstairs, and his mother was silent somewhere down the hall, still processing everything. The door creaked open. Helen Carter stood there, her 54 minutes and 11 seconds posture stiff and formal. I watched the dedication, she said, her voice measured. Elliot waited, knowing there was more to come. She named it after herself. She earned that right, Helen conceded. Helen looked at him, the steel in her spine slowly softening. She reminds me of your wife. Elliot blinked, surprised by the comparison. How? Lillian never waited for permission either. There was a moment of silence between them, a shared memory hanging in the air. She'll be attacked, Helen predicted. You know that, by those who don't want change. I'll protect her, Elliot replied, his voice firm. Helen stepped closer, her eyes locking with his. No, you'll stand beside her, not above, not in front, beside. 54 minutes and 46 seconds, then she turned and left the room. Elliot sat there for a long time, staring at the dying fire. The world was shifting, and this time he wasn't resisting it. He was finally helping it turn. It started with a broken window. Maya got the call just after 3 a.m. Her phone vibrated angrily on the nightstand, dragging her out of the first deep sleep she'd had in weeks. She answered it on instinct, her voice still thick with sleep. This is Maya. Miss Williams, it's Sergeant Holden with Atlanta PD. You might want to come down 55 minutes and 19 seconds to the clinic. Her heart dropped. What happened? There's been a break-in. Looks like vandalism. No injuries, but you'll want to see it yourself. She was already out of bed, pulling on jeans and a hoodie. Lorraine sat up groggily on the couch where she'd fallen asleep watching late-night game shows. What is it? She asked, concern etched on her face. Someone broke in, Maya said grimly. 10 minutes later, headlights sliced through the parking lot as Maya's car pulled up to a scene of flashing red and blue 55 minutes and 50 seconds lights. Officers milled around with notepads and gloves, and yellow tape cordoned off the glass doors of the Maya Williams Community Care Center. Her chest tightened as she stepped out of the car. The front window had been shattered inward, glass shards scattered across the sidewalk. Spray paint slashed across the brick facade in ugly black letters. Stay in your place. Not a hero. White lives matter, too. Maya stood there, her expression blank, but her breath hitched. She didn't flinch, didn't 56 minutes and 21 seconds scream, and didn't cry, but something inside her cracked. Sergeant Holden approached. He was an older black officer, seasoned and respectful. We think it happened about 40 minutes ago. No cameras were working yet. The electrician was scheduled for Thursday. We'll canvass the area and get statements, but they knew what they were doing. Maya finished the sentence for him, her voice barely audible. He gave a grim nod. Lorraine arrived a few minutes later, still tying her scarf, her eyes wide as she took in the damage. Maya's voice was still eerily calm. Did they get 56 minutes and 52 seconds inside? No, the officer responded. We think they were making a statement. Well, Maya muttered, her gaze fixed on the hateful graffiti. So am I. By 9 a.m. the story had already made the news. A drone clip of the vandalism ran on 3 local stations, and talk shows were lit up with heated debates. Some hailed Maya as a symbol of unity attacked by hate, while others questioned whether all the attention had made her a target or even implied that she brought it on herself. Adam Fielder called. I can help you frame a statement 57 minutes and 22 seconds if you want. I don't need to reframe what they did, Maya said, her voice steely. But you can film what I'm going to do next. Within hours, a press conference was organized in front of the still-damaged building. Maya stood behind a podium, flanked by 2 clinic staffers and Lorraine at her side. No teleprompter, no prepared speech. She spoke from somewhere deeper within herself. I stood here just a few days ago and told the world that I was ready to serve again, ready to heal again. And last night, someone or some people decided to remind me that healing 57 minutes and 54 seconds isn't welcomed by all. She gestured to the vandalism now partially covered by a tarp. They tried to silence a place built for care, for broken bodies, for exhausted mothers, for scared children, for the uninsured, and for the forgotten. They thought if they used fear, I'd walk away. She stepped forward, her voice rising with determination. Well, here I am, not walking but standing because this building isn't just brick and glass. It's a promise, and I don't break promises. Reporters snapped photos furiously. I won't be intimidated. 58 minutes and 31 seconds won't be erased. And for every message they spray-painted, I've got one for them. She pulled out a white sign from beneath the podium. In bold black marker, it read, "This is my place." The crowd erupted. Some cried, some clapped, and some simply stood in stunned silence, watching a woman not just refuse to flinch, but declare war on silence. That night, Elliot Sr. arrived unannounced. Maya was cleaning up papers in the clinic's back office, her knuckles still scraped from helping 59 minutes and 4 seconds board up the window. I saw the press conference, Elliot said simply. You were magnificent. Maya didn't look up from her work. It shouldn't have to be this hard. No, it shouldn't, he agreed, but it is, and that's why you matter. He walked further into the room and set down a manila folder on her desk. What's this? She asked, her voice guarded. Security proposals. We'll install surveillance, reinforce the glass, and set up motion lights quietly, discreetly but effectively. Maya paused, her expression thoughtful. Is this coming from Carter 59 minutes and 36 seconds financial? No, he said, his eyes meeting hers. It's coming from me. She looked up finally, her eyes tired but resolute. Thank you. He stepped closer, his voice softening. Maya, I know you didn't ask for this spotlight and you didn't ask to be the face of anything. But the truth is that your strength is the story, and it's the one they'll keep trying to stop. I'm not a martyr, she said, her voice firm. I'm just tired of running. Elliot nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then let them do the running. There was a quiet moment between them. Elliot, Maya said softly, do you 1 hour and 11 seconds ever wish things were simpler, all the time? He replied, his gaze thoughtful. But then I remember simplicity never changed anything. The next morning, Maya returned to the clinic to find something waiting on the door. Someone had scrawled on a large white poster board in blue ink. She saved a life. She gave us hope. You can't silence truth. Underneath were nearly 100 signatures. Maya didn't need to ask where they came from. The neighborhood had spoken, and the message was clear. This story wasn't over. 1 hour and 43 seconds was just heating up. It had been a week since the break-in, and Maya was back in her rhythm, if you could call it that. Long days at the clinic, night classes at Emory, paperwork, patient charts, grant applications, and board meetings. There were moments when she barely remembered to eat, but the ache in her back was proof of progress. She wore it like armor. Still, she hadn't forgotten the feeling, that strange chill she felt every time she turned off the lights at night, like something was watching. On Thursday, 1 hour, 1 minute and 15 seconds evening, Lorraine called her into the front lobby. You've got a visitor. Maya looked up from her desk, rubbing her temples wearily. I'm not in the mood for more cameras. Not a reporter, Lorraine said, her voice quiet and serious. It's a man who says he used to work with Elliot Sr. That made Maya pause. When she entered the lobby, the man was standing near the window, tall, in his early 50s, wearing an expensive coat, his hair slicked back, and clutching a briefcase like it held secrets. Something 1 hour, 1 minute and 46 seconds about him didn't sit right. He smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. Miss Williams, he said, a pleasure to meet you. My name is Nathan Voss. Maya didn't shake his hand. What can I do for you, Mr. Voss? I'm here as a friend of the Carter family. Elliot and I go back decades, college even. Maya raised an eyebrow, her skepticism evident. He never mentioned you. Well, Nathan said with a thin smile, not every chapter is worth rereading. She said nothing, waiting for him to continue. I heard about the vandalism, he continued, his voice smooth. Unfortunate, 1 hour 2 minutes and 17 seconds, but predictable. You've stirred up quite a bit of attention, and not all of it is the good kind. Maya crossed her arms, her body language conveying her lack of interest. If you're here to tell me to back down, don't bother. I've been threatened by better. He chuckled softly. I admire the fire, truly, but I'm here to offer perspective. Try me, Maya challenged. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice conspiratorially. There are people, powerful people, who feel this whole hero-nurse narrative is dangerous, that it sets a precedent. It's making certain donors nervous. 1 hour 2 minutes and 48 seconds, especially as Carter Financial moves toward expansion. And what does my clinic have to do with their wallets? Everything, he said simply. You've become a symbol, Miss Williams, and symbols are hard to control. When you speak, people listen. When you stand, others follow, and that makes men like me uncomfortable. Maya's jaw tightened. Good. Nathan chuckled again, but there was no warmth in it this time. I'm not your enemy, he said, but I'm also not here to lose. Then you shouldn't have come, Maya replied, her voice cold and unwavering. There was a pause, and then his voice dropped even lower, becoming more menacing. You know, reputations are fragile. One wrong story, one slip of the tongue, one old record, and people start asking questions. Are you sure you want that kind of scrutiny? Maya stared at him, and then slowly she walked over to the reception counter, picked up a laminated flyer that read, No one silences care. No one buries the truth. She held it out to him. Put this on your fridge, she said, her eyes unwavering. That way you don't forget who 1 hour 3 minutes and 50 seconds you're dealing with. Nathan took it with a smirk. I see why Elliot likes you. I'm not here to be liked, she said, her voice sharp. I'm here to build, and I don't scare easily. He turned to leave, pausing at the door. Be careful, Miss Williams. You're not just challenging the system. You're threatening it. She watched him exit, the door clicking shut behind him like a final warning. That evening, Elliot Sr. called. I just got word Nathan showed up at your clinic. Maya didn't hold back her anger. You want to tell me why a man 1 hour 4 minutes and 19 seconds with a villain name just threatened to ruin me? Elliot sighed heavily. Nathan is part of the old guard. He was my father's right hand for years. He's a master at protecting our interests, even if it means burning bridges. He's not subtle. No, but he's not stupid either, Maya countered. If he came to you, it means the pressure's building. Maya rubbed her forehead wearily. I'm not backing down, Elliot. I'm not asking you to, he said firmly, but I am asking you to be careful. They won't just attack your reputation. 1 hour 4 minutes and 54 seconds they'll attack your funding, your building, and your people. I'm used to fighting with nothing, Maya said, her voice tinged with bitterness. I know, he said quietly, but now you have something, and that's what they're afraid of. There was a long pause. Do you regret pulling me out of that car? He asked softly, his voice filled with a vulnerability she hadn't heard before. She closed her eyes, the memory still vivid. No, but I regret that doing the right thing made me a target. You're not alone anymore, Maya, and that makes them the target. Now, 2 nights later, she found a white envelope slid under her door. No name, no return, 1 hour 5 minutes and 27 seconds address. Inside, a photograph, a blurry image of Lorraine locking up the clinic at night. A second one, Elliot Jr. at the playground, his back turned. And one more, a blurry frame of Maya herself, walking alone from her car. No threats, no words, just silence. Maya stared at them for a long time, her mind racing. Then she calmly gathered the photos, placed them into a folder, and dialed Sergeant Holden. "Time to turn the cameras on," she said, her voice steady despite the fear churning inside her. The new security system chirped quietly as Maya locked the clinic's doors that 1 hour and 6 minutes evening. Surveillance cameras blinked red in every corner. Motion sensors were synced with the police precinct nearby, and panic buttons were discreetly embedded under desks. But still, her gut churned because fear didn't need doors. It slipped in with every shadow, every unfamiliar car parked too long across the street, and every low hum of the phone line when no one spoke on the other end. Lorraine had taken Elliot Jr. home early that night, and Elliot Sr. had insisted Maya keep a detail on standby, one of his 1 hour 6 minutes and 30 seconds trusted men, ex-military, now standing across the street pretending to check his phone. But even that didn't settle the storm inside her. She was reviewing patient files in the back office when the alert chimed, not the motion sensors, but the back alley camera. She clicked it open, the image grainy at first, but then movement. A man, hooded, standing still, almost too still. Then he moved toward the side entrance. Maya's heart kicked into high gear. She hit the silent alarm, knowing police response time was fast, under 5 minutes now. But in 5 minutes, 1 hour 7 minutes and 8 seconds, anything could happen. She stepped into the hallway quietly, her white sneakers silent against the linoleum floor, her breath shallow, keys in one hand, and her phone in the other. She heard the metal door rattle, then a voice. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," came a low growl from the shadows behind her. She spun around. It was him, Nathan Voss, no longer in his polished suit, but now in a dark jacket, his eyes gleaming with something far colder than business. "You broke in?" she asked, stunned. "Not exactly," he said, holding 1 hour 7 minutes and 40 seconds up a key card, a triumphant smirk on his face. Her stomach dropped. "How?" He stepped closer, his voice dripping with condescension. "The thing about legacy institutions, Maya, is that they're built on layers, and I've been in the foundation longer than you've been alive. You're trespassing," she said, her voice gaining strength. "And you're trespassing on history," he snapped. "You think because a few donors wrote you checks and a few cameras liked your face that you belong here?" She backed toward the reception desk, her fingers inching under the counter. "This building was going to be turned into 1 hour 8 minutes and 8 seconds condos before your sob story hit the airwaves." Nathan growled, his face contorted with rage. "You hijacked the narrative. You think Elliot's going to protect you forever? You're a temporary cause. The minute you become too expensive, too loud, too black, he'll drop you." Maya didn't flinch, her eyes fixed on his. "You done?" Nathan tilted his head, a sinister smile playing on his lips. "Not yet." He reached into his coat. She hit the panic button, a sharp buzz echoing through the clinic. Then a click. Nathan paused, his eyes widening slightly. "That was a mistake." "No," Maya said, her voice filled with defiance. "Coming here was your mistake." The 1 hour 8 minutes and 42 second sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Nathan's face twisted, his rage breaking through his carefully constructed veneer. "You think they'll protect you?" He sneered, his voice laced with contempt. "You think the police are your friends now? After all this, you still don't get it. You're a headline, Maya, not a hero." Maya stepped fully into the light, her eyes blazing with defiance. "No," she said softly, but with unwavering conviction. "I'm the reckoning." 2 squad cars screamed into the parking lot, floodlights illuminating the windows. The back door clanged open as officers rushed in, guns drawn. Nathan tried to move, but it was too late. 1 hour 9 minutes and 18 seconds hands where I can see them, shouted Sergeant Holden, leading the charge. Nathan hesitated for a split second, and Holden barked, "Bad choice." He was tackled hard to the floor, cuffed, and dragged out before he could even sputter a protest. As the officers secured the area, Holden turned to Maya, his expression concerned. You all right? She exhaled for the first time in what felt like hours. I am now. He gave her a slow nod, respect evident in his eyes. We'll process him. Trespassing, harassment, possible conspiracy charges. We'll dig, 1 hour 9 minutes and 51 seconds I promise. By morning, the footage had been leaked, not by Maya, not by the cops, but by Elliot Sr. The video of Nathan breaking in, the audio of his racist tirade, and the whole confrontation posted on Carter Financial's official social media with a simple caption. We do not protect covers. We protect truth. It went viral in less than an hour. Carter Financial's board scrambled. The media tore Nathan Voss apart, and donors rescinded him from every foundation he'd ever sat on. The old guard began to 1 hour 10 minutes and 26 seconds collapse because this time, the cameras weren't rolling for a charity gala. They were rolling for justice. Elliot Sr. showed up at the clinic with Elliot Jr. in tow later that afternoon. Was he scary? The boy asked, clutching Maya's hand. A little, she said honestly, but I've been through worse. Elliot Sr. stepped forward, holding a folded paper. She took it and unfolded it. It was a legal letter, a partnership agreement between Maya Williams and the Carter Foundation. 1 hour 10 minutes and 55 seconds equal ownership, full autonomy, and unconditional protection. You don't have to say yes, he said, his voice sincere, but I'm not letting you fight alone again. She looked at him, tears threatening to spill, but held back by her inner strength. I never asked for a war, she said, her voice soft but firm. No, Elliot replied, a hint of a smile playing on his lips, but you won it anyway. She smiled back. You really know how to pick your battles. Only when the woman's worth it. And outside, the sun finally broke through the clouds because sometimes justice doesn't arrive with a gavel. Sometimes it kicks in the back 1 hour 11 minutes and 28 seconds door with a camera, a panic button, and a woman who refuses to stay silent. The following Sunday, the clinic was quieter than usual. No appointments, no interviews, and no construction noises. Just the hum of the HVAC and the soft shuffle of chairs being arranged in a semicircle in the main lobby. Maya stood in the center, clipboard in hand, wearing jeans, a navy button-up shirt, and her sneakers, still marked with a trace of dried paint from the recent renovations. Today isn't about press, she said, her voice filled with purpose. It isn't 1 hour 11 minutes and 59 seconds about security threats or legal paperwork. It's about people. Are we ready? She asked Lorraine, who was carefully placing a tray of cookies and coffee on a folding table. As ready as we'll ever be, Lorraine said, brushing invisible lint from her blouse. You sure you want to do this? Maya nodded, her expression resolute. This building wasn't built for me. It was built for them, and they need to know it's theirs too. Within 15 minutes, the chairs filled with neighbors, community elders, single 1 hour 12 minutes and 27 seconds moms with toddlers, 2 pastors, a retired school nurse, and even a teenage boy Maya recognized from the gas station down the street, the one with his head always down and his hoodie always up. This was the first community listening circle, an idea Lorraine had pitched weeks ago. Before people will trust your medicine, she had said, they have to trust you. So here they were. Maya stepped forward, her voice clear but gentle. Thank you all for coming. I know time is a luxury that most of us can't afford, so I'll be brief. This 1 hour 12 minutes and 58 seconds center is yours, not just in theory but in truth. That means if something's not working, if something's missing, or if you're afraid to walk through these doors, I need to know, not later and not through rumors but now. An older man raised his hand. Name's Clarence. I was born in this neighborhood in '52. This clinic used to be a jazz club back then, and my brother played sax in that very corner. The laughter rolled through the room, easing the tension. Clarence continued, I've seen a lot of buildings come and go, a lot of promises made and broken. So, I guess my question is, how do we know this place won't be just another headline? Maya nodded slowly. Because if it ever becomes that, I'll be the first to tear it down myself. That earned a few murmurs of approval. A woman spoke next. I'm Alicia. I got 2 kids and no insurance. My baby's asthma is acting up, and I can't afford another ER bill. Do y'all help with that? Maya answered without hesitation. We've got a pediatric respiratory program launching next month. Sliding scale. Free inhalers for qualified families. Someone clapped. Then another voice chimed in. What about after-school programs? A safe space for the kids? We're working with the city to fund a weekly tutoring and wellness group, Maya said, starting with Saturdays, and if anyone here wants to volunteer. She looked around. We'll make space for you. As the meeting continued, so did the voices. People spoke. Maya listened, really listened. And then, in the quietest voice from the back row, a small girl asked, "Is this where the lady saved the daddy?" Maya turned. The child, no older than 6, had curly hair pulled into 2 puffballs and eyes too wide for someone that young. "Yes," Mia said. "That's this place." The girl nodded solemnly. "My mommy said you were brave. She said you didn't wait for no one to tell you what was right." Maya swallowed. "Well," she said softly, "sometimes the world makes you wait, and sometimes you just run toward it anyway." Later that evening, after the chairs were stacked and the last cookie eaten, Maya stood alone in the lobby, looking at the corner where Clarence said jazz once echoed. She imagined that saxophone, the smoke, the laughter, the rhythm of life. "Feels alive again, doesn't it?" Elliot Sr.'s voice broke the quiet. He stepped in, tie loose, sleeves rolled up. She smiled without turning around. "It does." He handed her a small box. "What's this?" "Open it." She did. Inside, a silver nameplate. Maya Williams, RN, founder and clinical director. Her breath caught. "I had it made the day after your interview aired," he said. "Took me this long to finally give it to you." "I'm not officially a nurse yet," she said. "License isn't reinstated." He shrugged. "Doesn't change who you are." She looked at him, touched in a place she didn't often let anyone near. "Thank you." They stood there for a moment, the fluorescent lights buzzing above them like city stars. Then Elliot cleared his throat. "My mother wants to meet you properly." Maya turned sharply. "Seriously?" she says. "She owes you an apology." Maya gave a quiet laugh. "She owes me a lot more than that." I told her that. "I'll think about it." "No rush," Elliot said. "But I think it matters to her and maybe to you too." Maya didn't answer right away. Then she said, "Invite her to the next listening circle." He blinked. "Really? I want her to hear how people live when no one's listening." He smiled. "You sure you're not running for mayor?" She smirked. "One crusade at a time." And behind them, the building hummed with a different kind of power, the kind not built by bricks or wires, but by people showing up, telling stories, claiming space. Together. Helen Carter had never been to this part of Atlanta without a driver or an invitation, and certainly not alone. But today, she stepped out of the black town car herself, gloved hands adjusting her purse, spine straight as a yardstick. She wore navy wool, pearls, and a thin hat perched on graying curls, her war uniform for public civility. She looked up at the freshly painted sign, Maya Williams Community Care Center. Then she exhaled something between dread and pride and walked inside. The reception area smelled faintly of lavender and floor polish. No marble counters, no chandeliers, but it was clean, warm, lived in, and very much alive. Lorraine greeted her with a smile that stopped short of friendliness. "Mrs. Carter, we've been expecting you." Helen nodded. "Thank you. Is Miss Williams available?" "She's just finishing with a patient." Lorraine gestured to a seating area. "Please make yourself comfortable." "No." Helen sat stiffly on the edge of a leather chair, eyeing the homemade art on the wall. Crayon drawings by local children. One of them depicted a black woman with a white coat and a cape. She didn't need a label to know who that was. Minutes later, Maya emerged. She wore light scrubs, her hair tied back, a coffee stain just visible on one sleeve. No theatrics, no ceremonial handshake. She just walked over and sat down across from Helen. "I wasn't sure you'd come," Maya said calmly. "I wasn't either," Helen admitted. There was silence, thick, but not aggressive, just dense with history. "I watched your interview," Helen said finally. "I know. I didn't like what I saw. Mostly because it showed me myself." Maya's face remained unreadable. Helen reached into her purse and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "This is a letter," she said. "Not an apology. You already got that. This is context." Maya didn't reach for it. "I'd rather hear it from you." Helen blinked. "Excuse me? You've spent your life speaking through intermediaries, lawyers, assistants, paper. I want to know if you mean what you came to say." Helen hesitated, then carefully returned the letter to her purse. She folded her hands on her lap. "When I saw you over my son's body that night, I saw violence. I saw a threat. I saw something I've been conditioned to fear since before I was old enough to know why." Maya's jaw tensed. "I don't say that for sympathy," Helen continued. "I say it because it's the truth. My son was dying, and all I could think was that you were hurting him, because you looked like someone I was told not to trust." Maya swallowed. "You didn't ask. You didn't even look at your grandson who was begging for me." "I failed him," Helen said, her voice smaller now. "And I failed you. And I failed the woman I pretended to be for so many years." Another silence. "I don't need you to like me," Maya said. "But I do need you to understand something." Helen met her eyes. "I wasn't trying to be a hero. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was just trying to save a life, and that should never have made me a target." Helen's eyes misted, but no tears fell. "I was wrong, and I'm trying to unlearn decades of being told I was right." Maya sat back, exhaled slowly. "Unlearning is messy," she said. "I know," Helen whispered. "But I'm willing." "Maya." There was a pause. Then Maya stood. "I've got a support group meeting in 10 minutes. It's mostly mothers. Some have lost children. Some have lost hope. I think you should sit in." Helen blinked. "Maya, if you want to learn," Maya said, "you listen. That's the first step." Helen stood slowly. "Do I speak?" "No," Maya said with a half-smile. "Just sit. Just hear them." As they walked together down the hallway, Elliot Sr. passed by, startled. "You actually came?" he said to his mother. Helen nodded once, trying something new. Elliot looked at Maya, eyebrows raised. She said nothing, just gave him a look that said, "Don't mess this up." That night, Helen sat alone at her vanity. No jewelry, hair down, face bare. She stared at her reflection, then reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photo. Lillian Carter, her daughter-in-law. Maya reminded her of Lillian. Same fire, same dignity. "I see it now," Helen whispered to the photo. "I see it now." Back at the clinic, Maya sat with Lorraine on the front steps, sipping chamomile tea. "How'd it go?" Lorraine asked. She listened. "That's new." "She still has work to do," Maya said. "But don't we all?" They both looked up at the night sky, clear, quiet, waiting, because change doesn't always come with a bang. Sometimes it starts in a folding chair, in a listening circle, in a room where no one claps, but everyone hears. Monday morning arrived with a bite in the October air, sharp and unrelenting like the headlines it carried. Maya's face was on the front page of the Atlanta Courier, right beneath the headline, "Nurse turned advocate or political pawn?" New questions arise around Maya Williams and Carter family ties. She skimmed it once, then again, each sentence a precision strike. Anonymous sources, allegations of financial favoritism, claims that Elliot Carter Sr. was using a race narrative to manipulate public perception, and buried halfway through, a quote from Nathan Voss's legal team, painting Maya as emotionally unstable and prone to aggressive behavior, citing her unlicensed practice of emergency care on the night of Mr. Carter's collapse. Maya set the paper down slowly, hands steady, but her breath betrayed her. "They're trying to bury you in paper cuts," Lorraine said from across the office. "One rumor at a time. Double down." "I expected it," Maya murmured. "But expecting it doesn't mean it doesn't sting." Maya looked up. "They think if they wear me down enough, I'll make a mistake. Get angry, lash out, confirm every stereotype. And what are you going to do instead?" She folded the paper and dropped it into the recycling bin. "I'm going to build." At Carter Financial's Midtown office, Elliot Sr. stood in front of a bank of monitors. each one glowing with network news. His board was unraveling. 3 donors had pulled out of a minority investment fund. His VP of marketing resigned in protest, and a petition calling for his removal had gained 22,000 digital signatures in under 2 days. He turned as Eloise Patterson, his general counsel, entered with a file in hand and the look of someone who hadn't slept in 2 days. "They're aiming for a full audit," she said flatly. "SEC wants to know if there was quid pro quo between your foundation and the clinic." "There wasn't," Elliot replied. "I know that. You know that, but they don't care about truth. They care about optics. They want blood." Elliot paced slowly. "Then we give them truth so loud they can't ignore it." Eloise raised an eyebrow. "You're thinking of going public?" "I'm thinking of calling in every favor I've ever earned in this city. And I'm thinking of standing beside the only woman in this mess who hasn't once lied." She watched him for a long beat. "You really believe in her?" "Eloise, I believe she saved my life, and she's trying to save this city." Eloise cracked a dry smile. "That's the most reckless thing you've ever said and the bravest." Later that afternoon, Maya met with a lawyer of her own, a woman named Camille Rodas. Black, mid-40s, sharp blazer, sharper tongue. "You don't owe the media anything," Camille said, flipping through a packet. "But if we want to take control of this narrative, we need to get ahead of it." "I don't want to be a symbol," Maya said. "I just want to do my work." "Well, unfortunately, you're not the one who gets to decide that anymore. You are a symbol, and that makes you a target. So, the question is, do you stand still or do you own it?" Maya didn't answer immediately. Then she said, "I'll speak, but on my terms." "Good, because Channel 5 just offered you a live sit-down next week, prime time." Maya blinked. "That soon?" Camille smiled. "They smell ratings. But we'll turn it into a reckoning." That night, Elliot Jr. sat curled up on Maya's clinic couch watching cartoons, a half-eaten grilled cheese on the tray beside him. He looked up as she walked in. "Is it true what they said on TV?" Maya knelt beside him. "What did they say?" "They said you're not a real nurse." She smiled gently. "That's not quite true. I am a nurse. I just haven't gotten my license back yet. But I'm working on it." "Are you in trouble?" "Some people want me to be," she said. "But being in trouble isn't always the same as being wrong." He thought about that. "Daddy says you're brave." She brushed his hair back. "So are you." He beamed, then leaned in, whispering like a secret. "I'm glad you didn't let my daddy die." Maya's throat tightened. "I am too." The next morning, Camille sent Maya a file titled, "Prepared Questions." Maya replied with a voice note. "No scripts, no filters. If they ask me what happened that night, I'm going to tell them everything, and I'm going to look straight into the camera when I do." Camille responded with only 3 words. "Then let's go, because some stories don't need defending, they just need telling." Tuesday night, prime time, the city paused. At 7:58 p.m. Living rooms across Atlanta dimmed as televisions buzzed to life. Channel 5's logo flashed, followed by a familiar jingle. The segment had been teased all day. Live! Maya Williams breaks her silence. Some tuned in out of support, others out of curiosity, a few out of spite. But when the cameras came on, no one looked away. Maya sat beneath soft studio lighting. A navy blue dress buttoned to the collar, minimal makeup. Her hair pulled back into a neat twist, her eyes steady. The host, Danielle Monroe, was a respected anchor known for her calm tone and surgical questions. "We are joined tonight by Maya Williams," Danielle began, "the woman at the center of what has become one of the most talked about stories in the city, perhaps the nation." Maya offered a small nod. No smile. "Miss Williams," Danielle continued, "you've been called a hero, a fraud, a pawn, a symbol. Who do you say you are?" Maya's voice was low, deliberate. "I'm a woman who saw a man dying and decided to help. That's who I was that day. That's who I am now." Danielle leaned forward. "And what would you say to those who claim you were unlicensed, untrained, that you broke protocol?" Maya didn't flinch. "I was a licensed nurse for 10 years. I lost that license not because of malpractice, but because I took time off after my mother died. I couldn't afford the recertification process. Life got in the way. But none of that stopped me from knowing how to keep a man breathing when every second mattered. A pause. The camera zoomed in slightly. I didn't have a badge. I didn't have a title. But I had knowledge. I had training. And I had a child pulling on my hand, begging me to save his father. Danielle nodded slowly. That child, Elliot Carter Jr., has become something of a public figure himself. Some accuse you of using him for publicity. Maya's jaw tightened. That little boy lost his mother. He almost lost his father. He didn't ask for cameras. He asked for help. And I gave it. She turned, this time directly addressing the camera. If I became a symbol, it's because people made me one. But I will not let that be used to erase what really happened that night. I saved a man. I was arrested for it. I was vilified for it, and I was nearly broken by it. Silence filled the studio. Danielle let it hang before asking the next question. Miss Williams, why do you think this story struck such a nerve? Maya's voice softened, but her words hit harder. Because people like me aren't supposed to be the hero in other people's stories. We're background. We're suspect. We're danger until proven safe. That's what they saw when they looked at me. What she saw. Her voice shook just once. Even as I kept her son alive. Danielle leaned in. You're speaking of Helen Carter? Yes. She assumed the worst because that's what the world taught her to expect. And I don't hate her for that, but I won't excuse it either. Another pause. No one in the control room dared move. Danielle pressed on. What now? What comes next for Maya Williams? Maya glanced down for just a second. I rebuild, she said. Not because it's easy, but because that little boy still comes to my clinic every Friday with a new drawing. Because a woman came in last week who hadn't seen a doctor in 7 years. Because people are watching, and they need to see someone stand and not back down. Danielle's final question was gentle. What would you say to someone out there watching who still doubts your story? Maya didn't miss a beat. I'd ask them why they doubt it. And then I'd ask them if the roles were reversed, would they have hesitated to help? And if the answer is yes, then I think we all have bigger questions to answer. Danielle turned to camera 2. Maya Williams, thank you. The broadcast ended at 8:29 p.m. By 8:35, Maya's name was trending nationwide. Quentin Sr. sent her a single message. The world just changed, and you changed it. By 9:12, Helen Carter's private statement was released to the press. I was wrong. I saw a race where I should have seen mercy. I saw a threat where there was a healer. I judged and I was humbled. Miss Williams, you have my apology and my gratitude. At the clinic, Lorraine turned off the TV and looked at Maya, who sat on the couch like her bones had melted. You did it, Lorraine whispered. No, Maya said, voice barely audible. We did. Outside, car horns honked. People clapped on sidewalks. Neighbors lit candles on the clinic steps without being asked. Someone placed a note on the clinic door. 3 words written in block letters. We believe you. Because sometimes the loudest justice isn't shouted from courtrooms. Sometimes it comes from a calm voice, a single interview, and a woman who refuses to disappear. 3 days after the interview, the real storm began. Not in the form of threats, but consequences. City council chambers overflowed. Protesters filled the steps outside with signs that read, Justice for the helpers. We are not background characters. Care is not a crime. Inside, cameras clicked, phones recorded, and local politicians adjusted their ties nervously. Maya stood at the podium, a borrowed suit jacket over her blouse. Not as a witness, not as a victim, but as a key speaker invited to address the council under public pressure. Her voice, calm as always, cut through the room. I'm not here to ask for your pity. I'm here to demand your memory, because the only reason I'm standing here is that I survived your system. Behind her sat Elliot Sr., Camille Rodas, and Helen Carter, each of them more alert than ever. Helen sat stiffly, pearls clasped like a lifeline, but she nodded every time Maya paused. Councilman Ortega shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Miss Williams, while your story is certainly compelling, we must consider legal precedent. You were, by the state's definition, practicing without a license. Maya didn't blink. And by any definition, I was saving a man's life. Your system punishes people for being too poor to keep a piece of paper current. That's not about safety. That's about control. A soft murmur of agreement ran through the gallery. Councilwoman Brooks leaned forward. You're proposing a revision of the Good Samaritan law? Yes, Maya said. And not just for me. For every retired nurse, every EMT off duty, every midwife, caretaker, and home aide who's been made to feel like they're a liability instead of a lifeline. There was a silence that settled like fog. Then Elliot Sr. stood. If I may, I'd like to offer the Carter Foundation's full financial and legal support for this amendment. My life was saved by someone this system would have punished. I intend to correct that. The room buzzed, but Maya wasn't done. She lifted a sheet of paper, worn, stained, folded 4 times. This is a letter I received anonymously from a woman named Sheila, who watched my arrest from her apartment window. She wrote, I've lived in this city my whole life. I've watched people be punished for being kind, for stepping in. I stayed quiet then. I won't anymore. She looked up. We need a city that doesn't make people choose between compassion and survival. We need laws that reflect our values, not our fears. Applause broke despite the rules. Councilman Ortega looked as though he'd swallowed a lemon. By evening, the footage of the council session was trending. Activists nationwide picked up the cause. The phrase paper doesn't save people, people do trended for 2 days. But Maya stayed grounded. At the clinic, she helped a woman fill out Medicaid forms. She sat beside a man shaking from withdrawal. She hugged a teenage girl who showed up after running away. Because while the world spun headlines, healing didn't stop. In a quiet moment, Elliot Jr. climbed onto the clinic couch beside her. Are you going to be famous forever now? He asked. Maya smiled. I hope not. Why? Because I don't want to be known for one moment. I want to be remembered for what comes after. He leaned against her shoulder. I think you're like Batman. She chuckled. How's that? You come when people are scared. She nodded. Sometimes I'm scared, too. He looked up. But you come anyway. Yeah, she whispered. I do. Later that night, Helen Carter returned to the clinic. Not in pearls, not in heels, in a cardigan and sneakers. She sat on the front steps next to Lorraine. You were hard on her, Lorraine said without looking up. I was wrong about her, Helen admitted. About a lot of things. Helen nodded. I want to help, she said quietly. Not with my name on plaques. Just help. Lorraine sipped her tea. Then start by showing up. Keep showing up. I will, Helen whispered. And for the first time in a long time, she meant it. The bill Maya proposed passed its first committee review by unanimous vote. There was more work ahead, more resistance to face, but the door was open. Not for her alone. For every unseen hand that steadied a shoulder, every voice told to stay silent, every life touched in ways laws couldn't measure. Because justice doesn't always start in courtrooms. Sometimes it starts with someone who refused to walk away. It was a chilly Sunday morning in December when Maya returned to the same intersection where it all began. 3rd and Hollis. The street still bore the faint memory of skid marks. The old cracked sidewalk hadn't changed, but Maya had. She parked the car, stepped out, and crossed to the exact patch of pavement where Elliot Carter had collapsed months before. Where her hands, guided by instinct, training, and mercy, had fought for his breath before anyone asked who she was. And now this corner had changed, too. A new sign was bolted to a pole nearby, Maya Williams Way, dedicated to those who act without hesitation. Beneath it, a modest plaque embedded in the concrete. In honor of all who serve before they're asked, who heal without permission. Maya stood still, letting the cold air brush her face. She wasn't here for ceremony. There was no crowd, no press, just memory. I've witnessed countless buildings erected and subsequently torn down, and too many promises delivered and then broken. So, I guess what I'm really asking is, how can we be sure that this place won't simply become another fleeting headline? Maya gave a measured nod, her expression resolute. Because if it ever gets to that point, I'll personally be the first one to tear it down, brick by brick if necessary. This declaration elicited murmurs of approval from the assembled crowd. A woman then stepped forward to speak. My name is Alicia. I'm a single mom with 2 young children, and unfortunately, I don't have health insurance. My youngest has been struggling with a particularly nasty bout of asthma lately, and I'm simply unable to afford another exorbitant emergency room bill. Does this center offer any assistance with situations like mine? Without a moment's hesitation, Maya responded, as a matter of fact, we're launching a new pediatric respiratory program next month specifically designed to address these types of issues. It'll operate on a sliding scale basis, ensuring accessibility for families from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and will even be providing free inhalers to qualified families who meet certain criteria. A spontaneous round of applause broke out, followed by another voice chiming in from the back of the room. What about after-school programs? Do you offer any sort of safe and supervised space for the kids to go after the school day ends? We're currently collaborating with the city government to secure funding for a weekly tutoring and wellness program. Maya explained, her tone optimistic. We're planning to start with Saturday sessions, and we're actively seeking volunteers from the community to help us make it a success. She paused, glancing around the room with a hopeful expression. If anyone here is interested in lending a hand, we'll gladly make room for you. As the meeting progressed, the voices continued to rise and fall, each speaker eager to share their concerns and ask their questions. Throughout it all, Maya remained a model of patience and attentive listening. She genuinely heard what these people were saying, and she responded with empathy and a willingness to help. Then, a small, almost childlike voice cut through the air. It came from the back row, where a little girl stood, her eyes wide with curiosity. Is this the place where the lady saved the daddy? The question seemed to hang in the air, drawing everyone's attention. Maya gently turned her head toward the voice. The child couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with curly hair gathered into 2 playful puffballs. There was an innocence in her gaze that belied the harsh realities of the world around her. Yes, Mia answered softly, a gentle smile gracing her lips. This is exactly that place. The little girl nodded solemnly, her eyes sparkling with a mix of awe and admiration. My mommy told me you were brave, she declared, her voice filled with pride. She said you didn't wait for anyone to tell you what was the right thing to do. You just went ahead and did it. Maya swallowed, her heart swelling with emotion. Well, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Sometimes the world makes you wait, and sometimes you just have to run towards it anyway, no matter the consequences. Later that evening, after all the chairs had been neatly stacked away and the last of the refreshments had been consumed, Maya found herself alone in the lobby, gazing at the corner of the room where Clarence had once said the vibrant sounds of jazz music had echoed. She closed her eyes and conjured up an image in her mind. A sleek saxophone gleaming under the soft lights, plumes of cigarette smoke swirling in the air, the infectious laughter of the crowd, the irresistible rhythm of life pulsating through the room. It feels alive again, doesn't it? Elliot Sr.'s voice broke through the silence, startling Maya slightly. He stepped into the lobby, his tie loosened and his sleeves casually rolled up, a sign that he had been working hard. Maya smiled, but she didn't turn around. It does, she agreed, her voice filled with a sense of quiet satisfaction. Elliot held out a small, rectangular box towards her. What's this? Maya asked, her curiosity piqued. Open it, Elliot replied, a hint of anticipation in his voice. Maya carefully took the box and lifted the lid. Inside, nestled on a bed of soft velvet, lay a gleaming silver nameplate. Maya Williams, RN, founder and clinical director. It read. Maya's breath caught in her throat, her eyes widening in surprise. I had it made the day after your interview aired, Elliot explained, his gaze fixed on Maya's face. It just took me this long to finally get around to giving it to you. Maya shook her head, a mixture of gratitude and disbelief swirling within her. But I'm not officially a registered nurse yet, she protested gently. My license hasn't been reinstated. Elliot simply shrugged his shoulders, dismissing her concerns with a wave of his hand. That doesn't change who you are, he said, his voice firm and unwavering. You're a nurse through and through, and that's all that matters. Maya looked at him, her heart touched by his unwavering belief in her. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, reaching a place that she rarely allowed anyone to get near. Thank you, she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. They stood there for a moment, bathed in the soft glow of the fluorescent lights that hummed overhead, casting a network of shadows that resembled the twinkling stars of the city skyline. Finally, Elliot cleared his throat, breaking the comfortable silence. My mother has expressed a desire to meet you properly, he announced, his tone somewhat hesitant. Maya's head snapped up, her eyes meeting Elliot's with a mixture of surprise and skepticism. Seriously? She exclaimed, her voice laced with incredulity. Yes, Elliot replied, his gaze unwavering. She feels that she owes you an apology for her past actions. Maya let out a short, mirthless laugh. She owes me a lot more than just an apology, she retorted, her voice tinged with bitterness. I told her as much, Elliot admitted, a hint of defensiveness creeping into his voice. I'll think about it, Maya conceded, her expression softening slightly. There's no rush, Elliot assured her, his tone conciliatory. But I truly believe that it would mean a great deal to her, and perhaps even to you, to have this conversation. Maya didn't respond immediately. She took a moment to consider Elliot's words, weighing the potential benefits and drawbacks of such a meeting. Finally, she spoke, her voice firm and resolute. Invite her to the next listening circle, she declared, her eyes fixed on Elliot's. Elliot blinked, clearly taken aback by her suggestion. Really? You want her to attend one of those? Maya nodded, her expression unwavering. I want her to hear firsthand how people live when they feel like no one is truly listening to them, she explained, her voice filled with conviction. Elliot smiled, a hint of admiration flickering in his eyes. Are you sure you're not secretly planning to run for mayor? He teased, his tone lighthearted. Maya simply smirked, a playful glint in her eyes. One crusade at a time, Elliot, she replied, her voice laced with amusement. And behind them, the building seemed to hum with a newfound energy, a different kind of power that wasn't built from bricks or wires, but rather from the collective spirit of the people who were showing up, sharing their stories, and claiming their space, together. Helen Carter had never ventured into this particular part of Atlanta without the comfort and security of a chauffeur or a formal invitation. She certainly had never considered doing so alone. But today, she found herself stepping out of the sleek black town car, her gloved hands carefully adjusting her purse, her spine as rigid and unyielding as a yardstick. She was dressed in her signature style, a tailored navy wool suit, a delicate string of pearls adorning her neck, and a thin, understated hat perched atop her carefully coiffed graying curls. This was her war uniform, the attire she donned when she needed to project an image of unwavering public civility. She lifted her gaze and focused on the freshly painted sign that hung above the entrance. Maya Williams Community Care Center. A complex mix of emotions swirled within her. Dread, apprehension, and a surprising hint of pride. She took a deep breath, exhaling a sigh that was somewhere between a sigh of resignation and a sigh of hope, and then she walked inside. The reception area was a far cry from the opulent spaces she was accustomed to. There were no gleaming marble counters, no sparkling chandeliers, no pretentious displays of wealth. Instead, the air was filled with the comforting scent of lavender and floor polish, and the space exuded an aura of warmth, cleanliness, and genuine liveliness. Lorraine greeted her with a polite smile, although it didn't quite reach the level of friendliness. Mrs. Carter, she said, her tone respectful but reserved. We've been expecting you. Helen nodded curtly in acknowledgement. Thank you, she replied, her voice formal and measured. Is Miss Williams available at the moment? She inquired, her gaze sweeping across the room. She's just finishing up with a patient, Lorraine explained. Please, make yourself comfortable in the seating area while you wait. Helen hesitated for a moment, her discomfort evident. No, thank you, she replied stiffly. Instead of sinking into the plush cushions of the leather chairs, she perched herself on the very edge of one, her posture ramrod straight, her eyes darting around the room, taking in every detail. Her gaze eventually settled on the collection of homemade artwork that adorned the walls. Crayon drawings created by local children, their vibrant colors and childlike innocence a stark contrast to the polished sophistication of her own world. One drawing in particular caught her attention. A depiction of a black woman wearing a white coat and a flowing cape, her arms outstretched in a gesture of protection and care. Helen didn't need a label or explanation to know who that was supposed to be. Minutes later, Maya emerged from the back, her presence filling the room with a sense of calm and purpose. She was dressed in simple, light-colored scrubs, her hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, a faint coffee stain adorning one of her sleeves. There were no theatrics, no grand entrances, no ceremonial handshakes. She simply walked over to Helen and sat down in the chair across from her, her gaze direct and unwavering. "I wasn't entirely sure you'd actually come," Maya said, her voice calm and measured. "I wasn't either," Helen admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. An uncomfortable silence descended upon the room, thick and heavy with unspoken words and the weight of history. It wasn't an aggressive silence, but rather a dense and palpable presence that seemed to fill every corner of the space. "I watched your interview," Helen finally said, breaking the stillness. Her voice was low and strained, as if she were forcing the words out against her will. "I know," Maya replied, her expression unreadable. "I didn't like what I saw," Helen continued, her gaze fixed on the floor, "mostly because it forced me to confront myself and the things I had become." Maya's face remained impassive, offering no clue as to what she was thinking or feeling. Helen reached into her purse and retrieved a folded piece of paper, her hands trembling slightly. "This is a letter," she said, her voice regaining some of its former composure. "It's not an apology. You've already received that. This is more like context." Maya didn't reach for the letter. She simply sat there, her arms crossed, her gaze unwavering. "I'd prefer to hear it from you directly," she said, her voice firm and resolute. Helen blinked, clearly surprised by Maya's response. "Excuse me?" she stammered, her composure momentarily shaken. "You've spent your entire life communicating through intermediaries. Lawyers, assistants, carefully crafted statements, and pieces of paper," Maya explained, her voice unwavering. "I want to know if you genuinely mean the words you came here to say. I want to hear it from your own lips, without any filters or distractions." Helen hesitated for a moment, her mind racing as she considered Maya's challenge. Finally, she carefully returned the letter to her purse, her movements deliberate and precise. She folded her hands in her lap, her gaze fixed on a point somewhere beyond Maya's shoulder. "When I saw you hovering over my son's body that night," she began, her voice barely audible, "I saw violence. I saw a threat. I saw something that I had been conditioned to fear since before I was even old enough to understand why." Maya's jaw tensed, her knuckles turning white as she clenched her fists. "I'm not saying this to elicit your sympathy," Helen continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I'm saying it because it's the truth. My son was dying, and all I could think was that you were somehow hurting him, because you looked like someone I had been taught not to trust." Maya swallowed hard, struggling to control the emotions. Her quiet footsteps approached. "Didn't think you'd come," Elliot Sr. said gently, his hands tucked into his coat pockets. "I almost didn't," Maya replied. They stood in silence for a while, the air thick with unspoken words. "I used to drive past this intersection every week and never saw anything," Elliot murmured, his voice barely audible above the city's hum. "Now I see everything, Mel." Maya looked at him, her gaze direct and unwavering. "That's the problem, Elliot. You almost had to die to start seeing." "I know," he admitted, a hint of regret in his voice. "But I'm awake now. That has to count for something." She nodded slowly. "It does." A cat beat passed between them, a comfortable silence filled with understanding. "You still working on the new satellite clinic?" he asked, breaking the quiet. "Groundbreaking is next month," Maya said, a touch of pride in her voice. South side, closer to the neighborhoods they forgot. I'll be there, he offered, giving a small, genuine smile. You'll be one of many, exactly how it should be, she replied, returning the smile. They stood a little longer, the city beginning to stir around them, a symphony of urban life gradually rising in volume. Church bells ringing in the distance added a layer of serenity to the scene. A woman walked by, accompanied by two small children in matching coats. She smiled warmly at Maya. The younger of the two children whispered, her voice filled with awe. That's her. Maya turned towards them, her expression softening. Hi there. The girl waved shyly, her eyes wide with admiration. Thank you for helping people. Maya crouched down to her level, meeting her gaze directly. That's what we do. We help each other. That afternoon, the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place, completing the picture. Her nursing license, fully reinstated, arrived in the mail. No grand moment, no celebratory parade, just a plain white envelope, postmarked from the state board, arriving as a simple confirmation. She held the paper in her hands for a long time, a wave of emotion washing over her. It didn't magically make her a nurse again. She'd never stopped being one in her heart. But now, finally, she didn't have to constantly fight for the right to be seen and recognized for who she was. She pinned it on the clinic wall, next to the children's drawings and other photos, a testament to the community they were building. There was also a photo of Elliot Jr. holding a stuffed raccoon, grinning from ear to ear. Lorraine stood nearby, arms crossed, observing the scene. Feels like the ending, she said, her voice thoughtful. No, Maya answered, stepping back to take in the whole picture. Feels like the beginning. Months later, the clinic was thriving, a vibrant hub of activity and healing. The waiting room was rarely empty, a testament to the community's need and the clinic's dedication. The after-school program had grown to include 36 kids, offering them a safe and supportive environment. The city had even passed the revised Good Samaritan Protection Law, which was unofficially and affectionately nicknamed Maya's Clause in her honor. Helen Carter showed up every Friday without fail, with warm biscuits and a notebook full of suggestions, most of which were surprisingly reasonable and helpful. And Maya herself walked the halls every day, clipboard in hand, her voice calm and reassuring, her heart steady and filled with purpose. One evening, as she was locking up the clinic for the night, Elliot Jr. ran up to her, clutching a picture he had drawn in school that day. It was a picture of Maya, complete with a cape, a stethoscope, and a big, bright smile. You made me the hero again, she teased gently, a playful glint in her eyes. He shook his head, his expression serious. No, this time I made you the mayor. She laughed, the sound echoing in the quiet street. I think one revolution at a time is enough, don't you? Okay, he conceded, grinning mischievously. But if you change your mind, I'll make the posters. That night, Maya sat alone in her apartment, the city lights twinkling outside her window. She poured herself a cup of tea, opened her journal, and began to write, her pen flowing across the page. There will always be another fire to put out, another fight to wage, another silence to break. But I am not alone anymore. This city doesn't just know my name. It knows what I stand for. And I will keep standing, no matter how loud the noise, how sharp the knives, how long the shadows, because someone has to, because someone did that for me once. Because justice never sleeps, and neither will I. She closed the journal, a sense of peace settling over her. Outside, the city breathed, alive and watchful, awake and aware. And Maya Williams, nurse, advocate, survivor, fighter, rested for now, drawing strength from the knowledge that tomorrow she would rise again, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The world would undoubtedly try her again, and she would answer, as always, with unwavering resolve. Present. This story serves as a potent reminder that true justice often begins with the most ordinary acts of courage. Maya Williams didn't possess immense power, elevated social status, or explicit permission from any authority, but she had an abundance of compassion. and that proved to be more than enough to save lives and challenge a deeply flawed system. In a world that all too often punishes those who dare to step out of line for the right reasons, her story poignantly teaches us that silence is not always safety, and that doing the right thing is rarely the most convenient option. However, when even just one person dares to act with unwavering integrity, they ignite a path for countless others to follow, illuminating the way forward. Because sometimes the quietest heroes end up making the loudest, most impactful difference in the world.